High-tech alchemy at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Invitation. He's going to die soon. When hearing William say this, Dumbledore's eyebrows suddenly raised up, and his expression suddenly became serious. I didn't kill Peter Pettigrew, William hurriedly added. As soon as he said this, he realized that there might be serious problems with this way of expression. It's as if I asked Dumbledore to clean up the mess. Lead the way, Dumbledore said softly. The White Wizard felt that sooner or later he would suffer from a serious heart disease because of this William Buffalo. William took Dumbledore to the room of requirement quickly. When he saw William touch out a secret room from the blank wall, the White Wizard was only a little surprised, but didn't say much. As the headmaster of Hogwarts, Dumbledore naturally knew the existence of the room of requirement. He was surprised that William knew and used this place very skillfully. The room had been arranged in an orderly manner. Whether it was the neat tool bench, the shelves storing various materials and utensils, or the shiny glass utensils, all showed that William had invested a lot of energy. Dumbledore then saw Peter Pettigrew, whose pupils were only white, tied tightly with ropes, sitting in a posture that made people feel uncomfortable just by looking at him. The White Wizard's body became visibly stiff for a moment, as if he had seen something incredible. I thought he was just a mouse with some abnormalities, but after bringing it here, it became like this, William said at the side without any guilt. He told the truth, but omitted the process of knocking Peter Pettigrew unconscious, feeding him 2 test tubes of strong sleeping potion, and packing him like a hairy crab. It's not your responsibility that he became like this, Dumbledore comforted William, holding the wand and walking forward, standing in front of Peter Pettigrew, chanting something softly. As he moved, the top of the simple-looking wand began to emit a faint light. I hope it's in time this time. Peter Pettigrew's expression was something he had witnessed in another example not long ago. Dumbledore calmed down and looked at Peter Pettigrew's eyes, which were almost completely occupied by the white of his eyes. Legilimens, Dumbledore's eyes became as sharp as a blade, and penetrated into Peter Pettigrew's mind without any hindrance. It was a mess here, like a pot of stew. Almost no memory was connected, and sometimes even the form of memory itself was torn apart, leaving only a sound, some breath, or even just a few shadows. More fragmented memories continued to emerge, occupying the part that originally belonged to Peter Pettigrew, squeezing them into corners, edges, and the bottom. Dumbledore noticed that those memories were not fabricated false content, but came from the experiences of many people. He felt like he was rowing a small boat, moving forward in a turbulent river, and he needed to keep an eye out for the treacherous and dangerous undercurrents. It seems that too many souls have been squeezed into a small space. Dumbledore realized that his exploration must be stopped in time, otherwise even this trace of consciousness might be swallowed up. But before he finally left, he still tried to find some complete or incomplete memories. A few days before Halloween, when Peter Pettigrew went to Hogsmeade to meet a mysterious man, he had an open book on his desk titled On Possessed Ghosts, Excommunicated Persons, Vampires or Zombies in Hungary, Moldavia, etc. But after noticing Peter Pettigrew's arrival, the man quickly closed the book. Dumbledore shook his head, getting rid of the strange feeling of being washed away by many memories just now, and said calmly, I will find a way to find this book. During this period, Peter Pettigrew has been going back and forth between the castle and the Forbidden Forest late at night. Although we don't know what he is planning, I must thank you for stopping him in time. Dumbledore couldn't help but feel a little fortunate. Although he did suspect that there was something strange about the incident when Sirius was captured, Dumbledore really didn't expect that Peter Pettigrew not only survived in the past 10 years, but also lived as a mouse for so many years, and even sneaked into Hogwarts Castle. Right under his nose. Professor Dumbledore, William felt a little confused. He didn't know why Dumbledore wanted to tell him these things, because no matter how he looked at it, he felt that Dumbledore was entrusting him with his care and setting a trap. Since you discovered Peter Pettigrew, you are naturally qualified to know these things, instead of being kept in the dark by me and going back to the dormitory to sleep in confusion. His secret involves dangerous enemies, and I need all the help I can get. But if you don't want to be involved, I can fully understand. It is my responsibility to defeat him. I will not force you or design you to do anything, Dumbledore patiently explained that after William helped Hogwarts defeat Quirrell last time, he had earned the right to know. Besides, the White Wizard never treated William as an ordinary fourth-year student. No matter who Heisenberg is, he will not be an ordinary fourth-year student. He's giving me the choice to stay out of it. William had long realized that in terms of the way Dumbledore treated him, he took a completely different approach from the way he treated Harry in the original plot. It was not close secret observation or design, but it was always like respecting an equal object, being open and honest, with almost no deliberate concealment. Whether it was allowing him to challenge the level on the fourth floor at will, sharing information about Nicholas Flamel, lending him the castle's house elves and the Shrieking Shack to run the secret of the nymph, letting him dig a factory under Hogwarts, or the special contribution award some time ago, and giving him a platform in the Daily Prophet, all proved Dumbledore's kindness. Thinking carefully, as a fourth-year student, I seem to have really squandered a lot of things. William suddenly realized that, unlike when he was in Ilvermorny, after coming to Hogwarts, he really did a lot of things that he was interested in and wanted to do. These things would have been absolutely impossible to achieve without the acquiescence or support of Dumbledore himself, even if he was a genius and had a golden finger. To be honest, he did not reject such a Dumbledore. On the first day at Hogwarts, William considered whether to behave more like his age. Perhaps that would win him a more comfortable student's life. It is true that Dumbledore knew his identity as Heisenberg very well, but he would not make it public, but would observe more closely in secret, just like he did with Tom Riddle. So what? Dumbledore was too decent. But William didn't do it after all. William, if you are still curious and not too sleepy, why don't you join me and see what other secrets he has? Dumbledore invited William. Of course, Professor. William accepted his invitation. Since he was destined not to go along with Voldemort, but was unwilling to give up everything and stay out of it, William had decided to help Dumbledore, and after he buried the old Voldemort back in the coffin, he would give Voldemort a shovel of dirt. Chapter 102, The Open Card. Sometimes, I can't help but wonder if our way of sorting is a bit biased. Dumbledore waved his wand, weaving many silver lights and wrapping Peter Pettigrew around him. His vigilant attitude gave William a sense of déjà vu, as if Dumbledore had encountered this situation before and was tricked. When he was still in Hogwarts, the impression Peter gave me was not as brave as he wanted to show. He followed Potter and Black, always watching them make trouble and be naughty with envy, and worshipped them as heroes. Dumbledore sighed deeply, and a regretful expression appeared on his old face. But this actually has nothing to do with which house he was sorted into, right? He would still follow other Potters and Blacks and covet the honor that should not belong to him, William retorted. But didn't you also refuse to go to Slytherin? Dumbledore raised his eyebrows in surprise. He was waving his wand and pulling many small things out of the robes worn by Peter Pettigrew. That's why I said that, William shrugged and replied. Whether in Ravenclaw or Slytherin, what he wanted to do would not be any different, just the people he knew would be different. When I think about how so many things can be stuffed into a mouse, I feel that magic is incredible, William said, looking at the things that fell to the ground. Animagus, a human body transformation, not only allows the wizard to turn into an animal, but also hides the things he originally carried. This gave him the feeling of touching a box and dropping it, an old-fashioned wizard robe that had been worn and tattered, which should be from Madame Welkin's shop. A few mints and chocolate frogs, who knows which unlucky student's inventory he stole from. A small leather pocket that is only the size of an ordinary person's fist, tied with a dark rope. Of course, the traceless extension spell. Dumbledore tapped the small pocket with his wand and easily untied the rope that served as a seal, but the inside of the pocket was empty. It smells of blood, as if some meat has been stored there. He lowered his head and smelled the remaining smell in the pocket and said, "So Peter Pettigrew takes meat from the Forbidden Forest every night and brings it back to the castle? But what kind of meat is this, and who is he going to give it to?" William thought of the blood mist that came out of Quirrell's body after he died, as if he had been hiding in the Forbidden Forest. Of course, Peter Pettigrew would not eat it himself, otherwise Gryffindor would have spread rumors such as man-eating rats that were full of complaints. Of course we have no way of knowing. Dumbledore shook his head. He had already taken out everything from Peter Pettigrew, but he didn't find anything worth paying attention to. The White Wizard turned his attention to Peter Pettigrew. Sever, cut all the clothes on the way up along the left cuff of the shirt, and they soon found a jet-black dark mark. Sure enough, William thought. Not only that, he found that the skin on Peter Pettigrew's body, like Quirinus Quirrell at the beginning, had strangely turned black. The closer to the heart, the darker the black color, and the surface of the skin presents a leather-like roughness. Very evil body modification. Dumbledore's expression was unprecedentedly serious. His wand continued to move towards Peter Pettigrew's heart. Be careful, the last time Professor Snape did this, Quirrell became a bomb, William warned. Peter Pettigrew's chest was hairy and fat, and it also exuded a rancid smell. Combined with a black and rough skin, it made people feel inexplicably disgusted. Fuck, the beautiful sea language blurted out. William saw Peter Pettigrew's heart, where there was no skin, flesh or bones left, but it was not empty. A strange little clock occupied the position of the heart. It showed a strange state of half flesh and half metal. Many blood vessels were connected to the surface of the clock, and black dirty blood was slowly pumped into Peter Pettigrew's body. Gerodius's dead bell, Dumbledore said solemnly. It is a very important symbol in necromancy. After the appropriate ritual, the necromancer can piece together a false personality that inherits part of his own will, and this clock is its carrier, Dumbledore introduced with a serious expression. After hearing about Quirrell's strange performance, he consulted a lot of ancient books, wanting to understand this very special black magic. Unfortunately, this knowledge is often only passed down between wizards and their apprentices. Can necromancy be used to create a personality? William keenly captured the key words. Transfiguration can create creatures that can have consciousness and act on their own, but in the final analysis, it is just a partial extension of the wizard's own will. He remembered that in the original book, Arthur Weasley's car inexplicably had a personality, could take the initiative to act, and was completely out of the control of the wizard. But how did it do that? William has been thinking about this question. If it is possible to create an artificial intelligence with even a partial personality through magic, then many of his ideas will have a chance to come true. I don't know. But if you are interested, maybe you can ask our friend. I believe that it won't be long before we have a chance to meet him in person, Dumbledore replied with a smile. He has realized that Peter Pettigrew has been captured by us, or at least something very serious has happened. This will force him to launch the plan ahead of time. No matter what it is, or how much confidence there is, the White Wizard explained. It is always better to have a chance of success than to have no chance at all. They did not find anything that could be used to send a message on Peter Pettigrew, which means that the person who has Peter Pettigrew must have a way to sense his situation. There won't be much time left, either for us or for Voldemort, William realized. Dumbledore obviously stored the Philosopher's Stone in the small corridor on the 4th floor, but Voldemort also knew that Dumbledore wanted to tempt him to challenge there. The arrogant Dark Devil would naturally accept the challenge. This is a game between two old friends. Professor Lupin will go to block all the passages in the castle leading to Hogsmeade, leaving only the one under the Whomping Willow. I believe you can ensure its safety. Dumbledore patted William on the shoulder. I will prepare all possible countermeasures, but we all know that if he really decides to do something, distracting my attention will be the most important premise for him to formulate a plan, and he will succeed, William added. Dumbledore is the most powerful White Wizard in the world, but because of this, he has a fatal flaw. He is an open card. No, I believe you will naturally understand what to do by then. Chapter 103 Remarks on the Release. This book was released at 12 noon today. It was a bit sudden. But actually I have been procrastinating until now and decided to write this review, slightly. After thinking about it, I feel that I should say something. At present, there are more than 20,000 and several hundred collections. To be honest, for me who is seriously opening my first book, I am still surprised that I can get to this point. At first, I thought, what would it feel like if I traveled to that world myself, but I soon found that it is almost inevitable to have a strong sense of alienation. Just like the dream I told through Dumbledore's mouth, I will always doubt whether this world is real, but to some extent I believe that this world is real. This is also William's feeling all the time. The three problems of the ship of Theseus, his views on house elves, and his unremitting desire to find the world he is used to while exploring magic through various means. This has always been the main line of this book. To be honest, when I opened this book, I brought a lot of subjective colors, and the style of writing is not popular with the public. Of course I can write about easy daily life, and I am very good at it, but I just feel that I want to write something that I find interesting. Every time a chapter is released, I will go to read it first and fix the layout. Sometimes readers read it too fast. Yes, I'm talking about you, and I will complain to the group. Theoretically, I should be crying now. But to be honest, I really don't think I'm miserable. Every day, familiar readers wrote and comment to cheer me up. What I write is also what I like, although there are mistakes in the rhythm control, details and description methods. But this shows that I have a lot of room for improvement. Straighten your waist. After the release, the number of words in each chapter has been changed from 2K to 3K, 2 updates a day, 5 updates on the day of release, and 2 updates for the helmsman, a total of 7 updates, which are estimated to be released in 3 times. The goal is 500 subscriptions, right? Then add 1 more update for every 100. After the release, reward 20,000 points, add 1 more update, 200 monthly tickets, add 1 more update, and settle the previous month at the end of each month. Although I don't think there will be much. Just like the sentence you will see when you open this book, I have always believed that words written with heart will shine. Chapter 104 The Advantages in Me. On the issue of how to deal with Peter Pettigrew, Dumbledore and William both agreed to temporarily control him and hide him in the room of requirement. Although his brain had been burned into a mess, there might be a chance to extract a relatively intact part of it in the future, and clear the name of Sirius Black, who was still imprisoned by Dementors in Azkaban. I think Harry is the one who is truly qualified to decide his fate. And the password to my office is, Fizzabee Candy, if you want to visit late at night next time, Dumbledore said, adjusting his thin lens glasses. His finger accidentally touched a bruise on his forehead, and the corner of his mouth twitched in pain. William dared to bet a gold galleon that Dumbledore did this on purpose, just to remind him not to use such a rough alarm clock again. After parting with Dumbledore, William returned to the common room of Ravenclaw. The charcoal fire in the fireplace was burning very vigorously. Gibbs leapt on top of Rowena Ravenclaw's statue again. She gently stroked his back with her left hand. After noticing William's gaze, she put her hand down awkwardly. In the original world, Dumbledore deliberately left Hogwarts to test Harry, creating an opportunity for Quirrell to take advantage of the situation. But now such a wonderful thing will definitely not happen. More than a dozen ordinary people have been killed, the Chamber of Secrets has been opened, and the danger of Voldemort now far exceeds the original plot. William sat on the high-backed sofa, thinking carefully. The occasional sound from the fireplace and the whistling wind outside the window formed a wonderful harmony. The change of the world line started with Quirrell. If Quirinus Quirrell was still as cowardly and neurotic as before, the Albanian Ministry of Magic would naturally not ask him to assist in investigating the disappearance case, and he would not have the opportunity to come into contact with a weird necromancy. Voldemort's most powerful card is the unknown. We only know that he may possess a Slytherin student. In addition, he has unidentified helpers in the Forbidden Forest and Hogsmeade. Oh, yes, there is also a basilisk that will be dealt with in a few days. William has made a whole set of beautiful plans for the future of the basilisk, just waiting for it to settle down. His advantage is that he has complete initiative, but the capture of Peter Pettigrew must be a major blow to Voldemort. After all the secret passages leading to Hogsmeade are sealed, he will also lose an important support. William's butterfly wings have been flapping, quietly changing the balance of the scales. Voldemort's plan to obtain unicorn blood has failed. The centaurs have already vigilantly protected the unicorns, and most of the crazy werewolves have been killed. We must think of a way to force Voldemort to launch the attack without sufficient preparation, and kill all his possibilities of resurrection in the castle. As for the time, they must control it before Christmas, otherwise once Voldemort chooses to leave Hogwarts Castle and reunite with his helpers outside the school, or even chooses to accept a less than perfect resurrection, there will be more variables. But the key to the problem now is the Chamber of Secrets. Even though there is a feasible idea, Snape still has at least a week to brew a potion that can remove the petrification of the Bloody Baron. He needs to modify the formula and proportions repeatedly to ensure that it can still be effective after adding in mature mandrakes. Before that, William needs to solve the problem of the basilisk. He has been coveting the metal in Nicholas Flamel's experimental manuscript for a long time. As long as the material on the basilisk can replace the rune snake, William dares to let Voldemort experience what the enchantment school is. As a former D&D fan, he still clearly remembers the classic words of the enchantment school mages: I don't know any attack spells, but I made 8 spell rings and 12 wands, all of which are engraved with spells, and none of them occupy spell slots. After determining the goal, William began perhaps the busiest week since he came to this world. In addition to normal classes, he had to take a lot of time to test the new sleeping potion. The 3-headed dog Fluffy, who was particularly irritable, proved to be a very suitable experimental subject. It never refuses the meat that is delivered to its mouth, even if the taste tastes a little strange. The only drawback is that in order to ensure that Fluffy sleeps soundly enough, William has to risk being bitten by it to get close to the trapdoor. After the 7th edition modification and 3 times of being almost bitten, William's sleeping potion finally reached a level that satisfied him. A few days ago, the architect Mr. Anderson had sent William an annotated design of the castle's pipelines. The pipes of 2 bathrooms were marked in bright orange, one of which was the abandoned girls' bathroom on the 2nd floor of the castle. According to the castle's pipeline drawings, among all the pipes, only the pipes of these 2 bathrooms can be confirmed to be directly connected to the passage where the secret room is located, and they are thick enough to accommodate the large pieces of meat thrown as bait. William pulled Penelope to work overtime and had already boiled enough powerful sleeping potion. Now there is only one thing to wait for. That night, Harry found William panting. "William, we know the truth about the Chamber of Secrets. It's a basilisk. There's a basilisk hiding in the pipes of the castle," he said very excitedly, and seemed to notice Hermione's increasingly unfriendly eyes behind him, and hurriedly added, "In fact, Hermione was the first to discover it. I dare say she has almost flipped through all the books in the library and found many kinds of creatures that may be hiding in the pipes. But Harry, you are sure that it is a basilisk, right?" Ron added, but he just looked at Hermione provocatively and was easily suppressed by her eyes. "I just suddenly remembered that this summer, I talked to a python. It wanted to pounce on my cousin daily. The snake also told me that it had never been to Brazil. This is another story, but if Hermione hadn't helped narrow the scope, I would never have realized that it was actually another snake talking." Harry scratched his head a little embarrassedly. "We should tell Professor Dumbledore about this. He must have a way to deal with the basilisk. But I have already talked to Professor McGonagall. She just said that we should spend more time on studying instead of guessing these unfounded stories." Hermione took over the conversation and looked at William seriously. "I guess you didn't tell her that Harry is actually a Parseltongue," William guessed. "Ron said that. He thinks we should not tell others that I can talk to snakes because this is something that only the heir of Slytherin can do, so Slytherin uses a snake as their symbol," Harry replied. "Leave this to me. I will be responsible for writing a letter to let Professor Dumbledore know. But for the Chamber of Secrets, I think we will definitely need your help." William took the initiative to take over the work. He saw that Harry and Ron both showed expressions of relief, but only Hermione frowned, as if she was carefully observing William's performance. As the two of them walked towards the Great Hall, Hermione stayed behind and asked William quietly, "Did you know that the thing hidden in the Chamber of Secrets was actually a basilisk?" Although she asked a question, there was no doubt in her eyes. She was smart and naturally realized that William's hint was too specific at the time. And after hearing about a basilisk, William did not question it or show a surprised expression like Professor McGonagall. "I actually have some guesses," William nodded and admitted. "The eyes of the basilisk are deadly. Anyone who is stared at by it will die, and its venom is also deadly toxic. I dare say that the reason why Malfoy did not die on the spot but turned into a stone statue was because the ghost blood man Baron happened to block his gaze from the basilisk," Hermione said very seriously. She immediately thought of William's bad record when he was wandering in the Forbidden Forest. "You can't take risks by yourself. The basilisk is too dangerous. It's not like an 8-eyed giant spider. Don't worry, I will tell Professor Dumbledore about this," and finding the Chamber of Secrets itself is inseparable from his help, William comforted Hermione. He didn't want to expose the fact that he was actually a time traveler who knew everyone's secrets, so he chose to discover the Chamber of Secrets by guiding Harry. "Do you promise that you won't mess around?" Hermione looked at William suspiciously, and only walked towards the hall after he nodded in agreement. "The time is finally ripe." William took out a gold galleon from his arms and gently stroked it. Soon, the house elf Lalo appeared in front of him. "Mr. Buffalo," Lalo bowed respectfully. Although William tricked them into reluctantly wearing tuxedos as work clothes, they would always change back to the teacup cloth strips when working in the castle, but Lalo was used to speaking with his upper body straight. "We are going to prepare to execute Big Fish." William gave the signal to start the plan. "As you wish." Lalo snapped his fingers and disappeared. In the Big Fish plan, the participation of more than 100 house elves in Hogwarts is also a very important part, even a crucial part. The next step is to wait for Professor Dumbledore's cooperation. William rubbed his hands and thought excitedly. Although he had foreseen that Dumbledore would definitely show the expression of what made you think of such a controversial and brave thing, he had already prepared a very detailed business plan. If he could convince Dumbledore with just 3 sentences, then with this plan with more than 3,000 words and pictures, it would be easier. The resources of the entire castle against a basilisk, the advantage is mine. William certainly wanted to say this, but decided not to set up strange flags. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 105 Big Fish Plan. Somewhat to William's surprise, after listening carefully to his plan to capture and industrialize the basilisk, Dumbledore, though somewhat hesitant, readily agreed to cooperate with his actions. You mean, I need to tell the students to avoid using these toilets in the next few days and seal them with a spell? Dumbledore looked at the thick stack of castle pipeline planning drawings, and he was trying his best to understand it, but to be honest, this question seemed a bit beyond the scope for him. Since defeating Grindelwald, Dumbledore has been keeping an eye on the world of ordinary people. But whether he can understand current news and weekly magazines, or defeat the Dark Lord, it does not mean that he can also read a complete set of water supply and drainage drawings. Even William himself finally understood these things after repeatedly reading the detailed explanation recordings and diagram annotations of the architect Mr. Anderson. Yes, the pipes connected to these bathrooms are the first batch of pipes in Hogwarts Castle, which are the ones supervised by Venus Gaunt. We need to lower the water level in the secret room as much as possible. William took out another drawing that was pressed underneath and pointed to the shaded area. Compared with the drawings in the book Pipeline System Planning and drawings of Hogwarts Castle, this drawing looks newer, with more detailed composition and higher precision. It comes from the most recent pipeline renovation. Although there have only been 2 times in history. The water supply of Hogwarts Castle has always come from the Black Lake, but in terms of drainage, only the pipes built in the early days will be collected in the passage of the secret room, and the new pipes have other drainage channels. The reason for this is very simple. With the continuous inbreeding of the Gaunt family and the prodigal sons of all generations squandering their ancestral property, most of the wealth left by Slytherin has been squandered, and the position of the board of directors has naturally changed hands. Slytherin's secret room has changed from a secret to a legend. So assuming you succeed in lowering the water level in the Chamber of Secrets, what will you do next? Dumbledore asked. Of course, we'll cast a bait. William proudly presented the powerful sleeping potion. Professor Snape helped improve its formula. Just stuff half a bottle into your meat and eat it, and the 3-headed dog will sleep for most of the day, and it won't wake up even if you attack it with ordinary spells, he explained. William spent the entire afternoon repeatedly going over the various details and emergency plans in the plan with Professor Dumbledore, just to minimize the possibility of errors. Now it's finally time to execute. William, Penelope, Ginny, and the 2 Wheel Eyes all came to the prefect's bathroom on the 6th floor of the castle. It was hidden behind the 4th door to the left of the statue of Boris the Confused, and the decoration inside was simply luxurious and shocking. A luxurious chandelier with candles cast a warm, soft glow over the room. Everything was made of snow-white marble, including the bathtub in the middle, which was sunken into the ground like a rectangular swimming pool. There were about 100 golden faucets on the edge of the bathtub, and each faucet had a different colored gem in the handle. There was also a diving board. The windows were hung with snow-white linen curtains, and a pile of fluffy white towels was placed in a corner. There was only one painting on the wall, framed in a gilded picture. It was a golden-haired mermaid sleeping soundly on a rock, her long hair blowing across her face and trembling slightly with her every breath. But what didn't match the luxurious decoration was the ridiculous size of the bathtub. Its bottom had become bare, and a huge hole had been roughly dug out, revealing an extremely deep and spacious pipe inside. I guess after God remodeled the castle's plumbing system, the first place he went to build was this room. William guessed that this extremely luxurious bathroom would undoubtedly greatly satisfy Gaunt's pride as a descendant of Slytherin. With a light puff sound, the house elf Lalo appeared in front of him. Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Potter said that he had heard the snoring from the big fish, and he heard it very clearly. He bowed to William and reported. After obtaining Dumbledore's consent and cooperation, they waited for a few more days, and the water level in the pipe had been lowered to a very low level. Harry, Who could understand the basilisk's words, was arranged by William in a corner of the castle's basement. Judging from the straight-line distance, it was the room closest to the Chamber of Secrets. If Harry could hear the basilisk's voice there, it could be confirmed that the basilisk had not left the Chamber of Secrets. "Let's get started," William nodded to everyone in the bathroom, and they took out their wands and held them in their hands. He then took out a very large bag filled with buttons from his bag. Verdo, William waved his wand and turned as many buttons as possible into mice. The others did the same. Before long, the floor of the bathroom was full of gray-black mice, but these mice were all bald and had button-like eyes. There was no light in their eyes, and they kept screaming. Professor McGonagall will be furious if she sees this. She has been asking us to do every detail well, so that we can ensure that the things we transform are vivid and not like monsters like this, Penelope said in a low voice. She hesitated for a moment, trying to find an appropriate adjective. But before that, we will all be turned into talking black-haired mice by her. Jimmy shuddered, as if he thought of some horrible scene. They waved their wands and drove all the mice that were so numerous that they made their scalps numb into the pipes, waiting quietly. The deep and dark pipe was like a huge mouth, swallowing them all up. The rats were given very simple orders. Run forward and scream as hard as they could. They were responsible for waking up the basilisk. After a while, William suddenly felt that the connection between him and one of the rats he had transformed through transfiguration was broken, followed by the second, the third, and many other rats died at the same time. "My rat is dead," Penelope said excitedly. "Mine too," Fred was the second to raise his hand. "And mine too," then came George and Jimmy. They were lucky. They had only waited for such a short time, but they had already seen the death of a large number of rats. This meant that the basilisk was not far from the exit under this pipe, and it was not sleeping very deeply. "Lalo, put down the bait." William began to implement the next step of the plan. The house elves threw the meat pieces as thick as human arms, which had been prepared and sprinkled with fresh pig blood, into the pipe. In addition to adding some blood to the powerful sleeping potion, William also glued a mouse transformed from a button on the surface of each piece of meat. Lalo went back to Harry's side. Among the 5 exceptions to Gamp's basic law of transfiguration, the first one is food. No matter how advanced the transfiguration is, no matter how powerful the wizard is, it is impossible to create real food out of thin air. He ate it, but it seemed like he didn't eat it. The awakened basilisk will definitely not feel full after eating those mice. If the basilisk smells the blood at this time, it will definitely eat these pieces of meat. William recalled the steps of the plan. This is a crucial step. He waited quietly. Here it comes. William keenly felt that the connection between him and one of the mice tied to the piece of meat was suddenly broken. In just 1 or 2 minutes, the other mice on the piece of meat also disappeared. The basilisk couldn't wait to swallow all the meat. It must be starving. William still vaguely remembered the description of the Chamber of Secrets in the original book, where there was a mountain of mouse bones. In the past few hundred years, perhaps since the decline of the Gaunt family, the basilisk could hardly eat anything decent. It could only smash the unfortunate mice for fun. Next, we just need to wait quietly for the sleeping potion to take effect. It takes 10 minutes for the 3-headed dog Fluffy, so it should take at least the same amount of time or even longer for the basilisk. William made an okay gesture, indicating that the others with him could relax their nerves temporarily. The plan has been more than half successful at this point. The most difficult part is to ensure that the basilisk will not wander in other pipes. Fishing for basilisks is not that difficult, is it? Fred and George high-fived. It's like catching a goblin and throwing it out of the garden. Whoosh, he made a gesture of a strong man throwing a frisbee. I really want to go down and see what the legendary Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets looks like, but I think besides the basilisk, it should also hide some other secrets, right? Penelope said curiously. Unlike Jimmy, who was pulled in as a reliable acquaintance to make up the numbers, she participated in William's plan almost throughout the whole process, whether it was preparing potions or studying the pipeline drawings of Hogwarts. She has a very strong learning ability, and because she is also an ordinary person, she can quickly get started without William's excessive explanation in many aspects. Who wouldn't want to? Think about it, the Chamber of Secrets left by Salazar Slytherin, one of the 4 giants 1,000 years ago. I dare say that even the Dark Lord himself would be tempted to go in and take a look. Jimmy stretched out his tone. Maybe the Dark Lord himself has seen the Chamber of Secrets? 50 years ago? The Chamber of Secrets was once opened, and at that time a girl died from a basilisk. William patted Jimmy on the shoulder. Everyone knows the name of the Dark Lord, and most people know that the Dark Lord calls himself Voldemort, but only a very few people have heard of Voldemort's real name, Tom Marvolo Riddle. Marvolo Gaunt is Voldemort's grandfather, the descendant of Slytherin. Chapter 106 Powerful Explosion. Time passed by little. In the prefect's bathroom, everyone was waiting anxiously. Penelope would look at her watch every once in a while, and then she would find that less than half a minute had passed. Fred's right hand was clenching his left wrist very hard, and it seemed that he didn't realize that the tips of his nails had already dug into the skin of his wrist. To be honest, when you came to us and said that you needed help to catch the basilisk, I thought you were joking, Fred said slowly, and even now he still felt a little bit unbelievable. Fourth-year wizard, Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, basilisk, catch. Merlin didn't know how these words could be connected in such a strange way to become a sentence, or even a story. Thinking of this, his strength increased a little. Hey, George slapped Fred's hand away. Why don't you grab your own hand? He glared at Fred. Of course it hurts me. After Fred finished speaking, he smiled and dodged George's angry kick at his leg, and ran a little further away. Yet, every time I thought I had adapted to his novel ideas, he always found a way to come up with a new crazy idea to scare me, and then prove that it was not only feasible, but also very effective. Penelope's eyebrows were raised beautifully. So you are really not Merlin's illegitimate child? Jimmy confirmed for the nth time. Ever since William joked with him that time, this idea has been lingering in Jimmy's mind, lingering. I am really not Merlin's illegitimate child, even if you add 50 gold galleons, it is impossible, and if Merlin's magic is really put into today, it may not be better than Professor Dumbledore, William replied somewhat helplessly. For historical figures, many people will look at them with a strange sentimental filter, but history is a process of continuous progress. Many magics have been lost, often not because they are secrets, but because these magics are not very useful, or there are simpler, more direct, and more effective alternatives. Just like the pipeline system of Hogwarts. Whether in the era of the Big Four, or in the era of Merlin and King Arthur hundreds of years earlier, the way they dealt with domestic sewage was probably to open the windows and pour it down. Could this be the reason why wizards first invented the vanishing spell? Is it because the wizard robes they wore were too long and would drag on the ground? William suddenly thought of a somewhat absurd idea. I really want to know what expression the heir of Slytherin would have if he saw his basilisk being caught by us and the Chamber of Secrets being made public. Fred took over the topic. He had already circled the bathroom, but was still caught by George, who grabbed a handful of his hair. It's a pity that we don't know who he is yet. George sat back in his chair and adjusted his robes. But his words reminded William. It seems that we can really force Voldemort to show his vest by opening the Chamber of Secrets. He carefully considered this plan. Although there are still many details that need to be considered carefully, this can indeed be a good bait. The house elf Lalo suddenly appeared in the prefect's bathroom. He bowed respectfully and said, "Mr. Buffalo." Mr. Potter said he heard snoring again. William checked his watch. 19 minutes, a little earlier than I expected, but the basilisk was starving and had taken a lot of potions, so it's reasonable. He decided to start the next plan. Let's go, guys. We should go find Harry and the others to prepare to enter the Chamber of Secrets. William clapped his hands and said. They came out of the prefect's bathroom, cast the disillusionment charm on each other, and walked to the basement of the castle. In a utility room in the corner, William found Harry, Ron, Hermione, who had been waiting here for a long time, and Professor Dumbledore, who served as a fuse. It seems that your plan is going well. Dumbledore nodded slightly to William. So far, so good, William replied to Dumbledore. They came out of the small utility room together, and Harry and the others secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The fact that they were in the same room with the headmaster obviously brought them a lot of pressure. Everyone made way to the corridor. Silentio, William drew a circle with his wand and shouted the spell. Because the next steps might make a lot of noise, he had to be as careful as possible so as not to be discovered by other students in the castle. Are we going to start? Fred and George were already eager to try. They all raised their wands and pointed at the wall at the end of the corridor. 3, 2, 1 Bombarda Maxima. They shouted the spell loudly together. Several bright red lights flashed. Accompanied by a huge explosion that only those present could hear, the ground shook violently. The solid stone wall was immediately blown into pieces by the spell, revealing a deep passage hidden behind it with a huge gap. There is no road in the world, but as long as the prepared equivalent is large enough, a passage can be opened. At the beginning of the designated plan, William had considered going down from the passage in the old girls' bathroom on the second floor, like a normal Slytherin heir. But he soon realized a problem. William didn't know where the secret passage was located. The secret room connected to the secret passage was a large area without a specific layout on the blueprint. The worst-case scenario was that as soon as they went down, they happened to see the basilisk's big beautiful eyes and fell to the ground and died. But there is no possibility of restarting life. At least William is not sure that he can do it now. The smoke and dust brought by the blasting spell slowly settled. This is so cool. In fact, when you said we had a chance to blow up the castle, we decided to help you no matter what, Fred shouted excitedly. Ahem, Mr. Weasley, please at least consider discussing this kind of thing in a low voice in front of me. Dumbledore coughed softly, interrupting his speech. Sorry, Professor Dumbledore. Fred's eyes were a little wandering, and George pinched him hard, but William dared to bet that it was not because they felt guilty and remorseful, but because Fred should not have revealed his intentions so early. Just as we planned, I, Penelope, and Jimmy will go in front. Fred and George, you two will take charge of the two sides. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, you will stand in the middle. Professor Dumbledore, please guard the back for us. William repeated the plan he had been emphasizing for the past few days. Even though everything had been done as perfectly as possible, he still didn't want any mistakes. Harry, your mission is the most important. You are the only one among us who can hear the sound of the basilisk, so you have to tell us the status of the basilisk at all times. He looked at Harry until he saw Harry nod with a serious expression. Leave it to me. I will definitely do it, Harry promised. Hermione, you have to help Harry cast the amplification spell. William looked at Hermione. She bit her lip. Her expression was very nervous, but she still nodded firmly. Ron, our lighting is in your hands. No problem. Ron nodded excitedly. He didn't expect that he would be able to participate in such an exaggerated project as catching the basilisk in his first year at Hogwarts. Then let's go. William looked around at everyone for the last time. The house elf Lalo had brought prepared buckets of water. William, Penelope, Jimmy, Fred and George all stretched out their wands and shouted, Verto. The clear water was transformed into stone slabs 2 or 3 fingers wide. They were suspended in the air by the floating spell, connected together, protecting everyone's body well behind. This was William's tank. They walked into the darkness. Even though the water had not been drained for a few days, there was still some water on the ground, and some puddles were ankle deep. The deadly eyes of the basilisk could not penetrate the stone slabs, and it would take some time for the poison to penetrate such thick stone slabs. As long as there was a short buffer time, William and the others would be able to act according to the emergency plan. Luma Solemn, Ron raised his wand to provide stable lighting for the people in the tank. Harry squinted his eyes, go this way, and after a moment he pointed in a direction. Following the direction indicated by Harry, William and his team moved forward carefully. The underground pipe system of Hogwarts was intricate and spacious, which reminded him of the sewer system in London. In the darkness, no one spoke, and the breathing and even heartbeats of each other became clearly audible. William could feel that Penelope, who was walking on his right, quietly grasped his robe with her left hand. Every once in a while, William would raise his wand and whisper the spell, Basilisk Apparicium, until he was sure that there was no basilisk at the far end of the spell, and then he continued to move forward. Dumbledore stood at the end of the team, watching this scene silently. He remembered the discussion between William and him in his office that afternoon. Why don't you rely on me more? You know, even if it is to deal with a basilisk that has lived for 1,000 years, if you are well prepared, it is not that difficult for me, Dumbledore asked doubtfully. He initially thought that William took the initiative to take on this matter in order to get as much help as possible, but William did not use him, the world's strongest white wizard, in the entire plan. It seemed that his role was really just emergency. Professor Dumbledore, of course I can rely more on you to solve this basilisk, but in that case, wouldn't the nature of this matter change? William's answer really surprised him. Chapter 107, The Dignified Basilisk. Professor Dumbledore, I can certainly rely on you more to solve this basilisk, but in that case, wouldn't the nature of this matter change? William answered, looking into Dumbledore's eyes. He could certainly ask Professor Dumbledore to come down from heaven and use the powerful old wand to catch the basilisk without much effort. But if time permits and conditions are sufficient, William would rather do it through his own efforts and ordinary methods. Even if it is a little complicated, it will take a lot of effort. But in that case, it would be meaningless, William said with a smile. I hope that not only me, but they can also participate and realize that magic is not something mysterious. What he really wants is actually a team. A trustworthy core team composed of young wizards who are not opposed to listening to his ideas and are willing to try. There are not many team-building activities that can generate more cohesion than a team building where everyone can participate, catch a basilisk that has lived for 1,000 years, and explore Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. Like I promised you, I will take it seriously as a career. The bright afternoon sun shone in from the windows around the arch-principal's office, making William's sparse golden short hair appear almost white. They seemed to have walked for a long time in the dark, and passed several forks. William could feel that their direction was going down all the way, and now they might have reached the bottom of the Black Lake. Wait a minute, Harry whispered. At a fork in the road, he signaled everyone to stop and stood there and listened carefully for a while. Go this way, it sleeps very deeply. And the snoring sounds like thunder, according to the direction indicated by Harry. They walked a short distance again, but this time when William raised his wand and released the basilisk appearance, he felt that the magic light of the spell bounced back suddenly not far away. The basilisk is in front of us, William said. He took out the History of Magic written by Bathilda Bassett, whose cover had become tattered, pointed his wand at it. Verdo, change, dot. The textbook turned into a pair of hands that looked a bit strange and stood on 4 rollers. William stuffed the camera into its hands and released it from the edge of the stone slab. The basilisk is also a snake. It has no movable eyelids on its eyes, only a transparent film. Therefore, even when it is asleep, the eyes of the basilisk are open. Oh, Professor Dumbledore said softly. It's just a little trick, William replied. He controlled the creature to move forward until it bumped into something and stopped. With a click, he pressed the camera's photo switch. After a while, there was another click. William used the flying spell to retrieve the photos. Although the focus was a mess, they still took pictures of the basilisk from different angles. It was a giant snake that was dozens of meters long and thicker than Harry's height. William dared to guarantee that it could eat Hagrid in one meal. It looks like it is sleeping soundly, Penelope said. She was right. The basilisk's head was lying on a slightly higher platform, and its eyes were open and looking in another direction. The long snake body stretched all the way to the depths of the dark passage, and the tail could not be seen. William used transfiguration to create a stone hood that looked like a jar, and carefully put it on the basilisk's head with a floating spell. He then waved his wand and used a spell to make the edge of the hood close to the snake's body. But how can we defeat it? If we use a spell, won't it be possible that a basilisk will wake up? Jimmy asked doubtfully. He was not the only one who was confused. In the plan he shared with others, William only mentioned how to find the basilisk, but did not tell them what to do after finding the basilisk. Why do you want to do something so dangerous, since it is so quiet? We have more than 100 house elves here. William rubbed the coins in his hand, and the house elf Lalo suddenly appeared beside him. Mr. Buffalo, he asked respectfully. The teleportation of house elves is simply frighteningly convenient. Is everything ready at the factory? William looked at the house elves. Everything is ready, just as you asked. As long as you give the order, we can start right away, Lalo said excitedly. Since meeting William, the workload of the house elves has been rising sharply. Nothing can make them happier than this. Then let's get started. He waved his wand and disbanded the stone slab made by transfiguration in front of him. After that, the basilisk would not have the opportunity to hurt anyone. Yes, Mr. Buffalo, the house elves responded happily. He snapped his fingers and disappeared from the air, but brought back a whole bunch of house elves in the next second. There are more than 100 house elves living in the entire Hogwarts castle, and now except for the 5 in the kitchen and the 3 in the nymph, all the other house elves are here. Mr. Buffalo, and Miss Clearwater, please give me your hands. A house elf walked up to William and said, he was also a model employee of Secrets of the Nymph, Oak Cork. The others also had their own house elves waiting beside them, but most of the house elves, led by Lalo, came to the side of the basilisk. They stretched out their hands and pressed them against the basilisk. Except for Dumbledore, who squinted his eyes and laughed secretly. Everyone else was confused and held the hands of the house elves beside them, quietly waiting for William's next instructions. For Merlin's sake, William, you are not preparing. You are preparing. Are you really preparing? Penelope suddenly realized something. But before she finished her words, she suddenly felt a very strong pulling feeling, as if she was pulled into a vortex and lost all sense of direction, but this feeling only lasted for a breath. She found herself standing on solid ground. Then there was a loud bang, like something huge falling into the water, followed by a crackling friction sound that made people feel their teeth clench, and another very heavy muffled sound. Bang, another sound. But compared to the previous one, it seemed that the sound this time was much smaller. Where are we? Harry asked in confusion. He looked carefully at the environment he was in. This was a circular square, with many magical oil lamps floating in the air for lighting. The walls were made of mud, and the ground was also made of mud, but it was pushed very flat. Such a large space, at this moment, except for a few of them, was empty, with only a few thick stone pillars as support. I didn't know you were progressing so fast. Dumbledore looked at this space with interest. He knew that William had been digging this underground world with a few young wizards and house elves. But this was the first time he really walked in. It could have been faster, but we were doing something else a while ago, William explained. Aren't you curious about where the basilisk went? I thought you would ask that first, his words reminded the others. Where's the basilisk? Such a big basilisk? What did you do? Hermione looked at William and asked in confusion. We dug a big pit. William led them to the other end of the square. Fred and George were quietly showing off to their younger brother Ron and Harry about the big project William had led them to dig. Look forward to Christmas this year. We have prepared rich gifts for everyone, Fred said very proudly. Yes, even Percy. George put his arm around his younger brother's shoulders and pulled Ron and Harry closer. Lalo and the other house elves came over. Mr. Buffalo, we have teleported the basilisk into the pit and sealed its mouth. It just woke up and wanted to struggle, but, he said, pointing to several bulges on the ground. You did a great job. Once it calms down, we will rescue the basilisk. William patted Lalo's shoulder and encouraged him, making him open his eyes happily. It's not hard. It's our honor to serve wizards. The basilisk is underneath. William, what did you put inside? Jimmy squatted down and looked at it curiously. He noticed that what they were standing on seemed to be a whole thick metal plate. Not far away, he also saw a long gap half a palm wide, from which he could see the bottom of the metal plate. But it was dark inside. This is a door and a lid, Jimmy blurted out. Yes, underneath, we dug a big pool and filled it with wet cement. Once the basilisk falls in, we will close the lid, William explained. The cement was naturally not mixed here. After Harry said that they were close to the basilisk, William had already notified Lalo and asked him to notify the architect Mr. Anderson to let the workers who prepared the cement leave the construction site. Afterwards, under the leadership of Lalo, hundreds of house elves used the levitation spell and apparition to transfer the several trucks of cement prepared in advance to the pit in a very short time. This is why William did not tell others what to do after finding the basilisk. Because there is no need to do anything. He did not prepare like D&D from the beginning, with warriors, mages and priests fully equipped, full of buffs, and aggro to open the monsters. Doing so will not only increase the risk factor, but also damage the spoils. The distance from the basement of the castle to the pit prepared by William for the basilisk is not far. With the combined efforts of hundreds of house elves and sufficient reading time, they can easily throw the basilisk into it. Chapter 108 Harmless Disposal. I hope the basilisk's vitality is strong enough. As long as it doesn't die, even if it has a breath left, it will not die in the future, William thought. He could feel that the basilisk under his feet was still hitting the metal plate from time to time, as if trying to find a way out, but its strength was getting weaker and weaker. This thing was ridiculously heavy, and it was not something that a basilisk could knock open with its flesh. The basilisk lasted for almost half an hour before it finally stopped completely and no more sound came out. But William still waited for a while, until the 1 hour mentioned by the architect Mr. Anderson, that the quick-setting cement would completely solidify, and then he called Lalo. Let's open the lid. William rubbed his hands and said excitedly, as if he was not going to pry open a cement column containing a basilisk, but a pot of Buddha jumps over the wall that had been boiled for quite a long time. With a sound of creaking of pulling open the alloy lid, a very thick, bumpy and ugly cement column was exposed. The house elves gathered around the pit, lifted it to the ground, and then began to trim the pillar with magic until they found a relatively intact part. When cement solidifies, it releases a lot of heat. The scales on the surface of the basilisk have rotted beyond recognition, revealing the severely burned flesh underneath. William approached the snake and examined it carefully. Yes, it's still alive. William could feel that the snake's muscles were still trembling slightly. Things became much simpler afterwards. William and the house elves pulled the basilisk's body out of the cement shell along this section of the snake and found its head. Because of the protection of the shame circle William put on, the basilisk's head, along with its most precious eyes, were intact. Professor, it's up to you next. William stepped back a little and gave the position in front of the basilisk to Dumbledore. Everyone else also stayed away from the basilisk, whether it was a wizard or a house elf. In the office, William promised Dumbledore that he would respect his opinion on the specific treatment of the basilisk. If the basilisk itself was innocent and was only used by Voldemort as a tool to kill people, then he needed to provide a suitable living environment for the basilisk in exchange for obtaining materials from it. The basilisk is a renewable resource. The fangs of snakes will naturally fall off and regenerate over time, and the scales and skin can also be obtained by molting, and extracting blood is much simpler. But unfortunately, if that happens, William will not be able to remove the pair of precious snake eyes. Why not? Dumbledore took a few steps forward and pointed his wand at the hood on the basilisk's head. Bang! A sound rang out. The stone hood exploded. The huge orange-yellow eyes of the basilisk with deadly magic were exposed, and it turned to Dumbledore fiercely, but the white wizard just waved his wand and conjured a shield made of silver light in front of him. The surface of the light shield was shaking violently, like a pot of boiling oil poured into water, but it barely held up after all, and did not break immediately. Dumbledore, hiding behind the light shield, had raised his wand. Legilimens, he shouted loudly. The dazzling silver light shone. Dumbledore's consciousness was like a blade, stabbing into the basilisk's mind fiercely. Driven by the instinct of the beast, the basilisk's consciousness set off waves in its mind, trying to resist Dumbledore's invasion. But it was too weak now, with severe pain all over its body, and it was unable to make any effective response. Talk to me, Salazar Slytherin, you are the greatest of the four giants, a boy said excitedly. Dumbledore saw a familiar handsome face. On a marble square, the young Tom Riddle looked at him with open arms. Is it you, Tom? He thought, and continued to grope down along the basilisk's memory, and soon found another memory. This was in a girl's bathroom. Stop playing around, kill this stupid woman, the young Riddle said lazily. A pale girl knelt down in front of Dumbledore, covering her face with her hands, but he had already seen her brown eyes. She fell down, and even the last bit of life in her body was taken away. You can't eat her, I need to keep her as a warning. Tom Riddle waved his hand to stop Dumbledore's forward movement. After that, there were long boring memories. The basilisk alternated between wakefulness and sleep, and had lost the concept of time in the darkness. Sometimes it felt bored and would look for all the flesh and blood it could find. Not to fill its stomach. Just for fun. This chaotic state lasted for a long time until the Chamber of Secrets was opened again. Talk to me. Salazar Slytherin, you are the greatest of the four giants. One day, a new, stuttering voice sounded, waking him up from his sleep. His figure made Dumbledore feel familiar. It must be a student in the castle, but the boy was wearing a hood and his face could not be seen. His hissing parseltongue also affected Dumbledore's judgment. Dumbledore continued to read. You wrote to me and wanted to get Malfoy's support. Seeing the boy's face, Draco Malfoy raised his head and said arrogantly. Kill him, the hooded owner smiled and called. Dumbledore slowly crawled over. He could already smell the smell of the boy, which was produced by humans when they were nervous. I'm almost there, I'm going to see him, he thought excitedly. But a ghost suddenly passed through the wall and blocked the boy from the Malfoy family. Ah! No! Dumbledore watched the ghost and the boy behind the ghost slowly turn into stone. Humph! The white wizard scolded angrily. After passing through the memory of the basilisk, he had already realized that this creature left by Salazar Slytherin had tasted the flesh and blood of many humans. It would feel sorry for not being able to kill wizards, and feel happy for hurting humans. Even if it was sleeping in the dark, it would want to tear open human flesh and feel the warmth of blood flowing between its teeth. It already had its own soul. But it was an evil and cruel soul. Alice, Dumbledore finally made up his mind. In the mind of the basilisk, Dumbledore set off a storm of sharp blades, which messed up its brain, leaving no memory, let alone consciousness. But in the eyes of William and others who were watching, the basilisk's head suddenly rose up, opened its huge head, and let out a silent howl of pain. It wanted to resist and struggle, but its whole body was wrapped in a thick cement shell and could not move at all. The ground was shaking slightly. Gradually, the basilisk's head drooped, and the thin film fell down, covering its terrifying orange-yellow eyes. Dumbledore waved his wand, dug out a piece of metal from the ground, twisted it into headgear, and fitted it tightly on the basilisk's head, leaving only a gap at the mouth. I have cleansed all its memories and eliminated its consciousness. It will no longer pose a threat to anyone. When you are ready, you can remove its eyes and use them to make props, the White Wizard said very tiredly. Going deep into the consciousness of the basilisk and understanding its feelings and thoughts is not a simple matter, even for the powerful Dumbledore. I am a little tired, I will go back and rest first, Dumbledore said, and after saying goodbye to William and the others, he left the underground factory. But William's work is not done yet. After the White Wizard harmless the basilisk, they gathered together and began to knock off all the cement shells around the basilisk. Cork, you apply burn ointment on its body and collect the scales, William directed the house elves. Lalo, you are responsible for removing its fangs. Be careful. After pulling them out with magic, put them directly into the containers I prepared. The fangs of the basilisk are deadly and extremely poisonous. Even if it simply touches the skin, the toxicity is enough to be fatal, but after alchemical processing, this toxicity can be transformed into very strong magic power, which is the top configuration in many recipes. William, can we take some scales from the basilisk back? Fred asked excitedly. We want to do a little experiment, the one you know, George winked at William. William participated in many of the projects they had on hand, and also gave some suggestions and shared some alchemical knowledge and techniques with them. However, compared to the original plot, where the Weasley brothers put a lot of energy into developing skipping drugs, William has been guiding them to do something reliable. But they are about to make a breakthrough. Of course, you can do whatever you want, but don't tell anyone that we caught a live basilisk for the time being, okay? Just wait a few days and it won't be a secret anymore, William replied, but he was looking at Ron. In Hogwarts, if you want everyone to know something, you can tell Hagrid. If you want everyone to know that something has happened but don't know the truth, you can tell Ron. Ron showed a disappointed expression. Okay, William, no problem, he muttered, but when can we tell others? If we wait until everyone knows about it, what will there be to discuss then? Going deep into the underground passages of Hogwarts, finding the whereabouts of the basilisk, and after a fierce battle, he and his best friend Harry defeated this bloodthirsty beast together. What an exciting story. Believe me, you won't have to wait too long, William said confidently. Chapter 109 Version Answer Existence Curse. In the House of Requests. William sat at his workbench, with a row of clean glassware in front of him, and the materials that were about to be used at hand. Nicholas Flamel's manuscript, the Book of Hieroglyphics, was open to one page and hung on the wall in front of him. After obtaining the fangs of the basilisk, he finally had the opportunity to really try this formula and make a magical metal. Alchemists believe that sulfur and mercury can make up all the 7 metals in the world, and gold is at the top of them. William read the contents of the manuscript word by word. Gold is the most perfect state that all metals can achieve and that wizards can imagine, Nicholas Flamel wrote. But the gold he refers to here is not the traditional gold ore, or gold nuggets, gold sand and other forms, but a magical concept, a stable state that can perfectly accommodate magic. Gold on gold. He spent a lot of energy and time, and a huge fortune that Nicholas Flamel himself could not despise, just to be able to shape this metal through alchemy. On top of that, he wanted to accumulate experience through this experiment, and then try to replicate his most outstanding alchemical achievement in his life. The Philosopher's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone. William thought of the stone that was now stored deep in the corridor on the 4th floor of the castle. The phoenix must first be bathed in flames, endure unimaginable pain, and turn into charcoal in order to be sublimated. And in order to be sublimated, the metal must also experience such pain. Before introducing the specific formula, Nicholas wrote a passage in French. This is my great work. In order to get gold above gold, the gold must first be calcined. William followed the steps in Nicholas Flamel's manuscript and operated carefully. Nicholas himself invested a lot of energy in this formula. The manuscript recorded his repeated modifications and questions raised when he doubted himself. Nico was deeply confused about how to make the metal die, how to make it retain more vitality, and finally revive. Because no matter how he tried, he could not get the perfect metal in his mind, and finally he had to give up helplessly. But Nicholas Flamel still left this recipe. Grind the poisonous snake fangs, melt them, extract the essence, and then mix them with herbs full of vitality and distill them. William turned a page of the manuscript. Put mercury and sulfur into the sage's egg and continue to heat it. During this process, a stable temperature must be maintained, and the materials in the alchemical furnace are heated evenly until they begin to fade and mix. For the alchemical furnace mentioned in Nicholas Flamel's notes, William chose to use a flask instead. It was much easier to use. Soon he saw that the originally messy and piled materials began to fade slowly as mentioned in the manuscript, mixed together, and formed a solid metal. Its surface began to show a golden luster. But at this moment, a large number of fine cracks appeared on the surface of the metal. In just 1 or 2 seconds, it collapsed and turned into gray-black powder. Nicholas Flamel said that these powders have very strong magic conductivity, and the cost of preparation is very low compared to wands and brooms. Of course, that requires finding some scarce materials. William poured out the metal powder in the flask and placed it in a test tube for careful observation. Compared to coffee mate, which takes a long time to wait for the plant to die, the formula for making this metal is not complicated and can be easily mass-produced. After William modified the inefficient steps in the formula, its production capacity was greatly improved. It took more than half a night for William to collect enough powder to fill an entire oatmeal box. But as Nicholas Flamel said, the melting point of this metal is very high, and it is almost impossible to put them into a mold and heat them for metallurgical molding. Thanks to powder metallurgy, William had contacted Mr. Anderson before and asked him to help find a powder metallurgy manufacturer to try to transform these metals into something that can be used. But how should I use them? Looking at this box of metal powder, William fell into deep thought. According to his understanding, in this world, wizards have several main methods to make magic props. The most common method is the existence spell that he once tried to transform. It can make the spell effective on the object if the object itself contains enough magic elements, or magic power, then the existence spell can last forever. The candies for skipping classes that Fred and George once made, as well as the protective hat that can be used to resist simple evil spells, are actually a kind of use of the existence spell. By mixing materials containing magic, they can make the spell last for a period of time on the object. But the shortcomings of the existence spell are also obvious. In order for the effect of the spell to last forever, the object itself must contain enough magic power as support, and the more complex the spell, the more magic power is required. If the spell extracts too much magic power in a short period of time, even exceeding the material's own bearing capacity, unpredictable changes will occur. William remembered that the Weasley family's car was driven for too long by Ron and Harry chasing the Hogwarts Express, so it lost power and not only made an emergency landing on the Whomping Willow, but also developed an independent will. Although I don't know how much Arthur tinkered with it and what materials he used, that thing definitely doesn't burn gasoline. In addition, once a spell is applied to an object in the form of an existence spell, there is no way to change it. Wizards must first eliminate the previous spell before adding a new spell to the object, and this process is almost impossible to avoid damaging the object itself. Just like Professor McGonagall and others went to check the firebolt that Sirius gave to Harry in the original book, William didn't want to use the existence spell as the first choice. Of course, he did want to take out some of the metal powder, make 24 rings or other small things in the form of powder metallurgy, and then use the existence spell to add various offensive or non-offensive spells to them. When it came time to duel with other wizards, William only needed to raise his hand to activate those rings and easily engulf his enemies with a storm of spells. As for furniture, William didn't want to take this approach either. The wizarding world has many convenient tools, such as dishcloths that can automatically wash dishes, knives for cutting vegetables, pots for stewing, phonographs that play records, and so on. But those things are not so much able to operate automatically as they are precast with simple spells that can be automatically executed. They need to be activated by the wizard himself through magic before they can be used. The radio is a product of this kind of magic. The wizard must tap it with a wand to turn on the radio and make it work properly. As for the more advanced rune language, rune array, or other spell languages, the production process is too difficult. Otherwise Mr. Ollivander would not have occupied the entire British wizarding world market. Professor Flitwick once gave William a book left by the former ancient magic teacher, which explained many processes for making rune language items, but those must be engraved by the wizard himself through magic. The effectiveness of the magic attached to the items depends entirely on the creator. William can certainly make some for himself or close friends, but if he wants to realize his plan through them, he will be exhausted and can't even think of doing it. Isn't there any way, as simple as those furniture, which can be mass-produced like the existence spell, and does not require the rune words and props to be completed by the wizard himself? William scratched his head. This is of course a very greedy idea. But he has to think about it. Speaking of which, the magicians in Type Moon engrave magic on their bodies, and then activate them through the magic circuits in their bodies so that even magicians who are not good at research can use the spells in it. Can this method be copied? Impossible. William quickly came to a conclusion. In this world, wizards are born with talent. Parents or grandparents have no magical talent at all, but their children may become wizards. In families where pure blood wizards are combined, although the possibility of giving birth to children with magical talent is higher, there is also the possibility of squibs. The little wizards study at Hogwarts, not so much to learn how to use magic as to practice their ability to control magic. But it seems that we can learn from this idea. William suddenly thought that he didn't need to achieve these three purposes on the same item. It was like letting a milk tea company open a store while sending its own employees to grow tea leaves and raise cows. So how did they solve this problem? Of course, they outsourced some of the links. If I use this metal as a base, let it only bear the responsibility of providing magic power and making the spell effective, just like a magic circuit. Then on this base, find a form that can record spells or runes, which is the imprint. It is not difficult to achieve these two parts separately. Then how should I connect them? William was thinking about this problem seriously. Through this magic metal, he can make a material that accumulates sufficient magic power, which is equivalent to the main body of the game console, and the imprint that is pre-written with spells and activated and controlled by the wizard's own will is equivalent to the cartridge. Then I need a slot now. This slot must be able to be pulled out after the cartridge is inserted, and it must also be able to match different cartridges in a system. Isn't this the answer to the version? William had already developed this thing by accident when he was still in Ilvermorny. His improved existence spell. Chapter 110 Magic Gold. William's modified existence spell is not complicated. It sacrifices the possibility of permanent existence of the existence spell, but greatly lowers the threshold of the existence spell, because William transferred the main body of energy supply to the wizard himself. Through this simple existence spell, William can make magic props at a lower cost, although they can only be used by himself, and the enchantment spell cannot be too complicated. But now, William has transferred the functional main body of his existence spell back to the object itself, because he has found a metal that can be mass-produced and is very suitable for use as a base, and the advantage of his simple existence spell is that it will not leave any mark on the object. This base can be immediately replaced with a rune word glacier after inserting the rune word glacier, and can even accommodate several plugs at the same time. It's a spell, William corrected his inappropriate statement. I can replicate almost all home appliances in this way, and I don't have to worry about them not being able to be used in Hogwarts if they are powered by magic. For Merlin's sake, William missed the home appliances in the ordinary world too much, the frozen Coke, which is not as good as taking it out of the refrigerator, and the hair dryer after taking a shower. Not to mention the TV. I can even watch The Minister in Hogwarts, William thought excitedly. Of course, the entertainment function is only secondary. The emergence of this magic metal, that he named magic gold, and can be mass-produced, has made many plans possible for William. William has already thought about it. After Mr. Anderson helps find a factory, he will open up a new magic prop brand Grey Matter to sell all kinds of things he made through alchemy, such as alchemical potions, protective jewelry, etc. In order to take advantage of the popularity of the Slytherin heir, he must make the props as soon as possible and quickly open up the market for Hogwarts students. Because William doesn't have much time left. Dumbledore has sealed more than half of the castle's bathrooms for more than half a week. He must restore the use of these pipes before Hogwarts returns to medieval hygiene conditions. By then, Voldemort will surely realize that he has lost such a big basilisk. The moment he wants to enter the Chamber of Secrets to confirm the situation, the true identity of Voldemort's vest will be exposed. When William came out of the room, it was already dawn. Damn it, I still have classes this morning. Forced to give up the idea of going back to the dormitory to catch up on sleep until he wakes up naturally, William simply washed his face in the room of requirement and went directly to the great hall downstairs for breakfast. William, good morning. Penelope sat down at the long table of Ravenclaw early. She grabbed a piece of toasted bread fried on one side in her right hand and ate it in small bites, while her left hand was flipping through today's Daily Prophet. Huh? Any news? William yawned and sat down at the long table. He took himself some scrambled eggs sprinkled with black pepper, and a few Munich white sausages fried in bacon fat, half of which were burnt black. A cup of strong black coffee was also necessary. After thinking for a while, William took out a small bottle of amber liquid coffee creamer. He reluctantly dripped a few drops into the coffee. Mrs. Primnear's beauty shop is closed. She was discovered and now works in a potion shop of the Zabini family. As a private potion master, Penelope saw William's action and turned her head slightly to avoid smelling the unique spicy and pungent smell of coffee creamer. The decline of Mrs. Primnear, who has a history of 200 years, was something everyone had expected. The circle of the British wizarding world was too small. Faced with a dimensionality reduction attack from the nymph, Mrs. Primnear soon fell into a situation where she could only rely on a few orders for customized beauty potions to survive. But William did not expect it to go bankrupt. Let me guess, you spent the night in the room of requirement again? When I left the common room, I saw Gabe sleeping on top of the Ravenclaw statue. Penelope carefully looked William's face up and down, and he turned his head away uncomfortably. This has almost become a routine. Gabe always likes to wait for William to come back in the common room. If William comes back late because of a night out and the red panda is too sleepy, he will sleep on top of the marble statue of Rowena Ravenclaw. When William comes back, he will carry him back to the dormitory. Sometimes, William stays in the room of requirement too late, and will turn it into a comfortable bedroom and sleep for a few hours. At that time, Gabe will sleep until he wakes up naturally, and then jump on William's pillow and won't get up until William brings back his sincerity of apology, such as apples, honey, pumpkin juice and other sweets. Then Gabe will forgive William. No, I didn't sleep at all. I just got the materials of the basilisk, and I couldn't help but do a few more experiments, William answered casually. He pinched his nose and drank the whole cup of coffee with coffee made in one breath. The spicy and bitter taste stimulated every taste bud of his, making them wail under the heavy load. A wonderful cool air came out of his mouth and went all the way to William's head, sweeping away the fatigue caused by working all night. If I were to drink the thing, I would rather make up for the sleep in Professor McGonagall's transfiguration class. Penelope looked at William's distorted expression because of coffee made and made a little joke. At Hogwarts, no one dared to sleep in Professor McGonagall's class. As an alchemical potion, coffee made is very consistent with this concept in terms of color, function, and price, but William really hopes from the bottom of his heart that it doesn't taste like this. I will find a chance to convey your point of view to Professor McGonagall. William stuffed a mouthful of scrambled eggs into his mouth. Students came to the hall one after another, and a large number of owls flew into the hall and landed on the long tables of their respective recipients. The 3 owls were looking for William. They brought 2 letters to him in a small package. One is the reply letter from the horror journey, and this one is from Francois Rodin in Paris. Who is this? William took the mail off the owl's leg and found some sweet crispy cereal for them to eat. The small package contained a book with a cowhide cover and about 200 or 300 pages. It was the manual that he bought from Gemma Farley, which recorded the research on the rune language. As for the letter from Paris, it seemed a bit strange. It contained a black metal card. The word salt was written in French on the front of the card. William turned it to the other side and saw gilded date, July 21st. Inexplicable person, William threw the metal card on the table. He thought about it, picked it up again, and threw it into his shoulder bag. He opened the reply letter from the horror journey. Previously, he consulted Dumbledore to check the book he saw in Peter Pettigrew's memory, on possessed ghosts, excommunicated persons, vampires or zombies in Hungary, Moldavia, etc. William searched almost the entire library and asked a house elf Lalo to go to Flourish and Blotch in Diagon Alley, but he couldn't find any information about the book. You can always trust 10 gold galleons. If not, put in another 10. William opened the reply letter from the horror journey. Dear Mr. Buffalo, Horror Journey is glad to serve you again. Regarding the book you inquired about, after consulting our consultant experts, the reply we received is as follows. This book was written by Com, the abbot of the Abbey of Senon in France, and was published in Paris in 2 volumes in 1746. Com wanted to refute the absurd ideas of muggles about vampires through this book, but he listed a large number of real cases of using black magic or creating dark creatures in the book, so he was considered to have a deep understanding of black magic. In other words, this book is equivalent to one of the references of black magic and necromancy. William summarized it simply. Then why would Voldemort's accomplices hiding in Hogsmeade read such a book? Haven't they all learned it through the manuscript of Dr. John Dee? He was a little confused about this. William clearly remembered that Voldemort was extremely arrogant in the field of black magic. He believed that his attainments were the highest, so naturally he would not look down on things like necromancy. If it weren't for finding a better way to resurrect and reshape his body, Voldemort probably wouldn't even know about it, let alone learn it. Snape is coming towards us. Penelope poked William's shoulder and pointed to the teachers' seats. Snape, with a gloomy expression, sallow complexion, and heavy dark circles under his eyes, walked towards them like a big bat. Snape walked behind him, looked at William, and the curve of his lips opened and closed slightly, as if he wanted to say something. He suddenly flicked his sleeves and walked out of the hall. What on earth is he doing here? William was puzzled. After Snape left, Roger Davis walked up to William. He had just run in from outside the hall and handed over a note panting. 10 o'clock tonight, the bathroom on the 2nd floor of the castle. I think you will be interested in exploring the Chamber of Secrets. This font, at a glance, is from Dumbledore. He promised to take William with him when exploring the Chamber of Secrets. In exchange, William would not sneak into the Chamber of Secrets for a night tour by himself. The timing is good. William put the note away. He had already given the magic gold powder to the house elf Lalo, who then passed it on to the architect Mr. Anderson to contact the manufacturer. It would take some time to deal with the basilisk, not to mention that there were house elves in charge there. Tonight, he could visit the Chamber of Secrets left by Slytherin to relax. William remembered that in the original book, Harry defeated Voldemort and killed the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. But he really didn't think that there would be only these things in the entire Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 111. No matter how you go, you are always on the right track. The old girl's bathroom on the 2nd floor of the castle. There was no one here, but the floor was full of water. The lighting gave people a very cold feeling, and from time to time, the hollow and resentful cries of girls could be heard. Although he wanted to go back to the dormitory early to catch up on his sleep, William arrived at the agreed place some time earlier. He soon realized that this was not a very rational idea. At least he should have cast an illusion spell on himself before entering this bathroom. Boys entering the girls' bathroom, crying, Myrtle shouted in surprise. When William saw her, she was stuck in a washstand as a ghost, with only her head exposed and her long black hair scattered behind her head. Her whole body squeezed out of the washstand at once, flew quickly towards William, and got in front of him. It's simply the Hogwarts version of the ring. William always felt that no matter what work it was, if it was thrown into the hands of the British, they would always be able to adapt it into a comedy version. You're not bad looking. Why did you come to the girls' bathroom? Who do you want to spy on? Myrtle was circling around William, looking at him carefully. Her appearance reminded William of a friend of his in his previous life when he was looking at the modeling of the Paperman girl. Isn't there anyone here? William wanted to find a way to get rid of this ghost. Myrtle was once a student of Hogwarts, and a Ravenclaw, but she was in the wrong place at the wrong time and said the wrong thing. When Tom Riddle first opened the Chamber of Secrets, she happened to be hiding in a compartment at the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets, crying and complaining about being bullied by her classmates. She died inexplicably, and inexplicably became a ghost, lingering in Hogwarts Castle, but she was different from most ghosts in the castle. Crying Myrtle could not leave the castle at will, but could move along the pipes and had a significant impact on the real water. But even if she became a ghost, not many people liked her. So are you here to see me? Myrtle looked surprised as she raised her head. But before William could answer, she lowered her head in frustration. Who would want to see poor Myrtle? That ugly girl from the Warren family. She has no femininity at all, and everyone bullies her. As she spoke, she dropped pearl-like milky white translucent tears, and they disappeared as soon as they landed. But even when she was crying, her eyelids would slightly raise, secretly looking at William. Seeing that the agreed time was getting closer and closer, William felt a little impatient. He decided to use his ultimate move. I heard that the handsome prefect of Gryffindor, Percy Weasley, will appear in the prefect's bathroom on the 6th floor tonight, with a plop. Myrtle disappeared in the pool closest to her. Strictly speaking, I was right. William was not lying. After catching the basilisk, the bathtub in the prefect's bathroom had been repaired and was open for use. Percy always liked that bathroom. Aesthetics are a matter of taste, after all. William walked into the bathroom and carefully looked at the girls' bathroom, which was used as the entrance to the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets. This was William's first time in a girls' bathroom. Except for the fact that there were twice as many cubicles, it was actually not much different from the boys' bathroom. In the center of the room was a large washstand. It consisted of 8 trapezoidal white porcelain basins clustered together like the petals of a flower. Above the white porcelain basins, there was a regular hexagonal decorative top made of pure white marble. Each white porcelain basin was equipped with a corresponding faucet, which looked like a small black snake with a dark green hue in the mirror behind it. "Good evening, William," Dumbledore walked in from the bathroom. He was wearing a pure white wizard robe that was very incompatible with a night out, holding a wand in his hand. "Good evening, Professor," William replied. He walked around the washstand and found a faucet that looked a little strange. It was engraved with a winding little snake. "Looks like you've discovered something," Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. "I think this faucet should be the passage to Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, but the answer should be given only after conditions are met, such as speaking in Parseltongue." William pointed at the special faucet and said, wanting to hint to the White Wizard to find Harry. Neither he nor Dumbledore could speak Parseltongue. To William's surprise, Dumbledore walked to the faucet without any hesitation, and made a strange gesture with his left hand. "Of course there is no problem." He waved his left hand and raised his wand. Just when William thought that Dumbledore was going to cast a powerful spell to confront the magic left by the Gaunt family, the heirs of Slytherin, he conjured up a human head with black hair. Then a thin body. Fortunately, the head and body were connected. William instantly realized that it was Harry Potter who had been hiding in the invisibility cloak just now. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A strange sound came out of Harry's mouth, like the hissing of a snake. In an instant, the faucet was covered in a brilliant white light and began to rotate, and then the sink began to move. It sank into the floor drain, revealing a pipe wide enough for one person to slide in. "Please go first." William pulled Harry to make way in front of the pipe. Dumbledore adjusted his glasses. He was too tall, so he had to take off his wizard hat and bend down to step into the pipe and slide down. "Professor," Harry shouted loudly. He also wanted to get into the pipe. "Wait a minute, don't rush." William then took out the full-body raincoat he had prepared in advance from his bag and put it on himself and Harry. He only prepared 2. Really, William was a good man, and of course he didn't want to see Dumbledore, who was wearing a white wizard robe, get himself dirty because of sliding on the pipe. The pipe was deep and narrow, with no bottom in sight. William resisted the nausea and sat in, sliding down. He could see many other pipes extending from here, none of which was as large as theirs. If the inner wall of the pipe was not so dirty, and covered with a lot of mud that William didn't even want to guess the content, this would definitely be a very exciting and interesting project. Maybe it was a little too exciting. Oh. It's just a small spell. If you are interested, William, I can give it to you as a Christmas gift. He noticed William's eyes. William and Harry took off their dirty raincoats and held the wands for lighting. "We must be at the bottom of the Black Lake. I don't know how Salazar Slytherin did it back then. He could dig so deep," Harry muttered. "You will be surprised at the wizard's talent in construction engineering," William answered in a low voice. Ever since he started digging that underground factory, he began to believe that if wizards were allowed to be the engineering team, they would be at least decades ahead of human technology. Almost all the problems that plagued ordinary people in construction, in the eyes of wizards, were just the difference in the length of the spell. They are all idle and stay at home or become dark wizards. In the end, they can't even defeat a high school. Can they just mine and build buildings for me? William thought. If one day he defeated Voldemort and took over the power of the Death Eaters, the first thing he would do would definitely not be to send them to the Dementors for food, but to cast the Imperious Curse on them and let them become 007's engineering team. No 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund and wages, no need to worry about union trouble, overtime can be extended at will, high-risk operations do not need subsidies, and work injuries can be solved by themselves. Even those Death Eaters can be pieced together and resurrected by finding a way to do it if they die. Following Dumbledore, they have been walking a long distance. The ground here is full of broken bones of small animals, most of them are mice, but occasionally there are other things. William guessed that they are the pets of the little wizards. Some time ago, Ron's pet mouse Scabbers was lost, and he was very sad. I hope Scabbers is not, Harry said in a low voice. Be careful, Dumbledore stopped. In front of them was a huge black shadow with a curved outline, lying at the corner of the underground tunnel. A strong light flashed. William found that it was actually the skin of a giant python. It was a disgusting bright green color and curled into a wrinkled ball. It was the skin shed by the basilisk. Professor, do you mind waiting for a moment? William suddenly made a request. Of course, we still have plenty of time. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. He had already guessed what William wanted to do since this transfer student came to Hogwarts. Many changes have quietly taken place in the castle. William stroked the gold coin. The house elf Lalo appeared in front of him. Called all the house elves to pick up the money, William said very excitedly, and suddenly thought of a slogan he had heard in his previous life: we are already at the bottom, and no matter how we go, we are going up. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 112. It suddenly lost its flavor. Perhaps Salazar Slytherin himself had never thought that more than 100 house elves would break in 1,000 years after he dug the secret passages and underground tunnels. Of course, Mr. Buffalo, the house elf Lalo replied happily. A moment later, he led other house elves to appear in this space. The wizard is Mr. Buffalo. That's right, great. Do we have work again? Great, I thought I could only go to bed bored tonight. Mr. Buffalo is the best wizard, the house elves were whispering to each other, and their words were enough to make any office worker, even those of 007, feel ashamed. Lalo, I hope you can divide into 10 groups, explore this underground area and draw a map. If you encounter snakeskin like this in the middle, move it away, William explained his arrangements. Of course, no problem, Mr. Buffalo, Lalo replied excitedly. Won't they be scared? Harry wanted to ask this, but he soon saw that after Lalo divided the groups and assigned the tasks, the house elves briefly apparated away for a while, and then reappeared with a large number of tools. Safety helmets with mining lamps, backpacks, safety vests, these things are not considered clothes for house elves, and they are needed for work, so they are not opposed, as well as strong flashlights and notebooks. Harry felt that this style seemed a little wrong. Dumbledore looked at Harry with some sympathy. Professor, shall we continue? William watched the house elves separate and move to various areas. When he turned back, he saw Harry, whose jaw was about to drop to the ground, and Dumbledore, who tilted his head slightly. Of course, Dumbledore shook his wand and continued to move forward. But for some reason, after seeing the dress and actions of these house elves, he suddenly felt that this trip to the Chamber of Secrets was not that interesting. They walked forward for a while. A solid wall stood in front of them. There were 2 snakes entwined with each other carved on the wall, and the snakes' eyes were inlaid with huge glittering emeralds. The 2 pairs of emeralds made the snakes' eyes vivid. They looked like real ones. I think you should say something in Parseltongue here, Dumbledore said to Harry. Harry stared at the 2 snakes. This time he didn't need to work hard to build up his emotions. Open, he gave the order. The wall cracked in the middle, and the 2 small snakes separated. The 2 halves of the wall slid to the sides in a balanced manner and disappeared without a trace. Harry, can you make them come back? William suddenly said. I don't know. I can try? But I don't know how to speak in Parseltongue. I mean, if there is no snake in front of me. Harry showed a trace of embarrassment. William took out History of Magic from his shoulder bag, waved his wand, and turned it into a python that was half a person's height and as long as Hagrid. For Merlin's sake, Harry took 2 steps back in fear of the snake. William controlled the transformed snake, making it stick out its tongue and make a strange hissing sound. Can you understand what I want the snake to say? He looked at Harry. 1,234,567. Harry listened quietly for a while and asked in confusion. Try to change the door back, William thought for a while, but still urged Harry. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A low hissing sound came from Harry's mouth, and compared with the python William had transformed, it suddenly seemed evil and cruel. A boom sounded. The two halves of the wall slid out again and closed tightly, and the two snakes on it were entangled together again. Harry was seen again, and there was a python that suddenly appeared. The green gems that served as snake eyes flashed twice, as if silently asking, "Little brother, what's wrong with you? What did you say just now?" William asked curiously, and the hissing sound of the snake he transformed sounded like a fool. "Close the door." Harry scratched his head. William was sure that the snake he had transformed himself was Hen. It must be because of the choice of python. "I can try a cobra next time, Harry, please stay away for now." He patted Harry's shoulder and asked Harry to walk back a little and not stand in front of him. William controlled the python and began to make a hissing sound. Nothing happened. The two entangled snakes looked at William's performance indifferently. One of them had a slightly flickering eye, as if laughing. "Harry, come back wearing the invisibility cloak." William called Harry to put on the invisibility cloak left by his father, which was said to be passed down from his ancestors. Harry was a little confused, but he still put on the invisibility cloak obediently and disappeared in front of them. They waited quietly. The python was still hissing non-stop. The emerald eyes of another snake on the wall were also flickering smartly. The emerald eyes of the two snakes flickered alternately, as if the first snake said, "Look at this big fool," and it replied, "Indeed." After a while, William groped around and patted several times but couldn't find Harry. "Harry, what's wrong? Are we leaving?" Harry answered after hearing William's words. He pulled down the invisibility cloak and revealed a head. The eyes of the two snakes on the wall suddenly flickered, as if they were frightened by something. From their perspective, it was as if a guy had just left for a while, and when he came back, only a head was left. That head could even move. Sure enough, William clapped his hands excitedly. He felt that the two snakes on the wall were very smart, not like a rigid password machine. Salazar Slytherin would not trust the password door to keep the entrance to his chamber of secrets. These two snakes, like the statue in the Ravenclaw common room, are very intelligent, and can even be regarded as personalities. He originally just wanted to sort out the logic of the wall opening the door, but found a surprise. "Harry, stand there and don't move." William held the wand and walked into the wall where the entangled snakes were. "Expulso," he shouted the spell, and a red light fell on the wall, but nothing happened. Not only was there no smoke, but there was no injury. Reducto. William changed to a more powerful spell, but when the spell fell on the wall, it was like a drop in the ocean, not even a ripple was caused. The emerald eyes of the two entangled snakes flickered slightly, as if they were laughing at William's wasted effort. Salazar Slytherin certainly would not forget to set up a heavy protective spell for the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. Even Dumbledore could not guarantee that he could break it even if he was very well prepared. But their eyes soon solidified. After a moment, Dumbledore, with a more settled expression, almost couldn't wait to walk into the Chamber of Secrets. He was silent, pursed his lips, and Harry, who had not yet digested what had just happened, and William, who had become happy, followed behind him. Nothing seemed to have changed. Except for a little difference. The wall was gone. The whole wall was gone. But it didn't matter. Really. William and the others stood at the end of a stone chamber, where the light was very dim. They walked a little further and found a tall ladder, and climbed down it to the bottom. With the help of the bright and gentle light from the tip of Dumbledore's wand, like the sun, they were able to see the whole stone chamber. Many towering stone pillars were wrapped with more stone pythons. They kept rising until they disappeared into the darkness of the ceiling. The ground was originally paved with tightly fitting bricks, but perhaps because it had been too long, it had become uneven and covered with puddles of various sizes. In front of them was an extremely magnificent statue. "Harry, try to say this sentence in Parseltongue. Speak to me." "Salazar Slytherin, you are the greatest of the four," Dumbledore said, remembering the memory of the basilisk. "Hiss, hiss, hiss." Harry shouted a long hissing sound, and along with his voice, the torches on both sides of the stone chamber were suddenly ignited and burned fiercely. The forest green mist rose from the water. They finally saw the full appearance of the statue. It was as tall as a giant, but its face looked so even by the standards of goblins. The face was very old, with some monkey-like features, a beard hanging down, a hunchback, and an expression that revealed a sense of arrogance. He was of course Salazar Slytherin. Salazar Slytherin must have a strong feeling about his unparalleled status in the castle, because he was the only one of the four giants who left a huge statue and used a coat of arms, snake, that symbolized his personal characteristics to represent his college. But it could also be because Salazar himself was actually not satisfied with his position in the castle, just like a country in the world that uses a pure white flag as its national flag. Because they wanted to show that they had little masculinity left, they simply built a terrifyingly tall thing with metal in Paris. Let's keep going, Dumbledore suggested, looking at William. All the former headmasters of Hogwarts, whether it was the respected Everard or the infamous Alias, including himself, had spent a lot of effort and adopted different, some even illegal means, to find the Chamber of Secrets. But the legend of Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets was cracked by a fourth-year Ravenclaw today, and it was an easy and rough method. No student has ever been as special as William. Whether it was the troublemaker Newt Scamander, the troublemaking James Potter and Sirius Black, or Voldemort Tom Riddle half a century ago. At least Riddle would never have thought that when he entered the Chamber of Secrets, he would even pick off the door he passed by. Maybe Nicholas Flamel is really right, Dumbledore had to admit. It would be better if William could be a little more wizard. Thinking of the house elves who were led astray by him, Dumbledore began to feel a headache again. The snakes at the door of the Chamber of Secrets moved, and the original book mentioned that Harry felt they were looking at him. Chapter 113 Hidden Map. After Harry lit all the torches in the Chamber of Secrets by shouting out orders, they could clearly see the entire stone chamber. The mouth of the statue of Salazar Slytherin revealed a large hole, which was probably designed to allow the basilisk to move. Professor Dumbledore, why would Salazar Slytherin, one of the four giants, choose to leave such a Chamber of Secrets? Harry asked in confusion. They were walking through the middle of the Chamber of Secrets, and the bones of small animals could no longer be seen on the ground. Under William's rough way of passing the level, he was still in a state of confusion about almost everything in the Chamber of Secrets. Malfoy and the Bloody Baron were attacked, Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets was opened, the entire castle was under martial law, the Quidditch game was suspended, and the entire castle fell into deep fear. But not long after, the basilisk was turned into a concrete pillar, and hundreds of house elves began to draw maps and look for treasure chests in the Chamber of Secrets. Even the door of the Chamber of Secrets was forcibly requisitioned by William and stuffed into the underground factory. Is this possible? Is this really possible? These two thoughts kept running through his mind. I think, Harry, you must have heard about the story of the two best friends among the Big Four, Gryffindor and Slytherin, who turned against each other, Dumbledore replied. Even though Harry himself had not read Hogwarts, a history, Hermione had told them many times some time ago. When the Big Four founded Hogwarts, they had disagreements about what kind of students should be recruited. Slytherin believed that they should be more selective when recruiting apprentices, only from families whose parents are wizards, because only in this way can the purity of wizard blood be guaranteed. After the most intense quarrel, Slytherin finally left the castle in anger. Harry recalled Hermione's words and said, "But what I don't understand is here, they said that the reason why Slytherin left the Chamber of Secrets was to clean up the so-called Muggle-born, but the person who was attacked was Malfoy? This was of course what Voldemort ordered the basilisk to do. He wanted to cause fear in this way. Harry. The basilisk is just a weapon. A weapon that can hurt anyone he wants to hurt at will in the hands of someone with Parseltongue." Dumbledore hesitated for a moment and replied. But the descendants of Slytherin knew that the basilisk existed and inherited the wishes of their ancestors, but they never used it, right? And why did Salazar Slytherin think that even if there was a basilisk, his descendants would be able to defeat the wizards of other colleges and eliminate all Muggle-born wizards? William took over the topic. This was also what confused him. A basilisk was indeed very scary, but that was 1,000 years ago, and the basilisk at that time was far less powerful than it is now. And after being well prepared, even if some unavoidable sacrifices were made, the wizards of Hogwarts could always defeat it. Why did Salazar Slytherin think that as long as he opened the secret room he left behind, he could eliminate all Muggle-born wizards? If a basilisk can do this, then why didn't the Gaunt family open the Chamber of Secrets and seek a chance to make a comeback after hundreds of years, even if they finally fell into decline? This sharp question was beyond Dumbledore's expectations. He was silent for a while and thought seriously. "We are about to know." Dumbledore stopped. They had walked to the mouth of the magnificent statue of Salazar Slytherin. It was dark there, with only some scattered basilisk scales shining faintly. They crawled into the hole. With the help of the light from the top of the wand, William saw that this was actually a passage that was constantly widening and extending forward. Standing in the mouth here, they could hear the faint sound of water. This must be the drainage outlet on the drawing, William guessed. "I feel like there are other people here," Harry said suddenly. He turned around and pointed his wand at one of the corners, but there was nothing there. "Hominem Revelio," William shouted the spell. A silver-white spiritual light spread out quickly, sweeping the three people present, reflecting a faint light. William and Harry approached Dumbledore. He raised his wand, and kept his mind highly tense. After a while, nothing happened. "Maybe I felt it wrong," Harry said, a little embarrassed. "No, your feeling is right. But that's not a person." Dumbledore suddenly took a big step to the side and tapped the wall lightly with his wand. The originally dark stone wall suddenly had a spiritual wave, and a green snake-shaped pattern protruded from the wall with a swoosh, and the metal snake head stood up. "It is hidden by advanced magic. If it weren't for Harry's reminder, even I would have found it difficult," the White Wizard explained. "I think it needs Parseltongue to open it." "Okay, Professor." Harry stared at the little snake and hissed in Parseltongue, wanting it to reveal the hidden secrets. Open the door, show the secret." Salazar Slytherin, Chamber of Secrets. He tried many combinations and felt that his mouth was about to dry up, but the snake on the wall remained indifferent. "Professor, I don't think Parseltongue will work on it." William patted Harry's shoulder, indicating that he could stop. This was not only to take care of Harry's lung capacity, but also for his own ears. He thought of a possibility. Maybe it wants to see some proof. William quickly thought of the treasures left by Salazar Slytherin, the pendant box, and the resurrection stone ring. As a time traveler, he naturally knew where those things were now, but they could not be obtained in a short time. And Salazar Slytherin would not have considered that perhaps after 100 or 200 years, these treasures he left behind would be lost? Or given his cautious attitude, he would naturally consider the possibility that the other three founders stole the key he left behind to open the Chamber of Secrets. Bloodline. "Yes, it must be bloodline," William said in a low voice. "The door outside can be opened by any wizard who can speak Parseltongue, but here, in order to preserve some more secret things, Salazar Slytherin will always only believe in the bloodline he left behind. But if it is bloodline, they will undoubtedly not be able to explore tonight." Dumbledore heard William's words and raised his eyebrows in surprise. His guess was actually not far off, and it was essentially the same, but he was a little hesitant and never said it out loud. In addition to this, another worry has been lingering in his mind, but now it has become a very suitable opportunity to test it. "Harry, maybe you can try to drip a drop or two of blood on it," the White Wizard suddenly said. He finally made up his mind. Okay, Professor," Harry nodded and replied. He moved closer to the snake, raised the fingers of his left hand, and hesitated for a moment. Just as he was about to bite through the skin and make a wound, William waved his wand and helped him cut a shallow cut. A drop of blood splashed on the metal snake. Its eyes suddenly lit up, emitting a frightening green light. It quickly broke away from the wall and swam to the top. A boom sounded, and on the wall where the snake was originally located, a very heavy stone door suddenly separated from the surrounding walls and sank down. Behind the stone door, William saw a narrow staircase winding upwards. The torches on the side close to the wall were suddenly lit one after another, illuminating their way up. "It seems that the basilisk is indeed not the only secret left by Salazar Slytherin," Dumbledore said calmly, as if he had foreseen this scene. He raised his wand in his right hand and took the lead in climbing the stairs, with William and Harry following behind him. After passing through this round staircase, they finally came to a heavy wooden door. There was no handle or switch on the door, but there was a metal plate that was a little rusty and curled up at the corners. "The air will praise my name. I am Salazar Slytherin, the greatest of the four." Dumbledore read it in Old English first, and then explained the content of this passage again in modern English. "I think it's better to read it in Parseltongue here." A little below the sign was a pattern of a curved snake. Although it was carved, it looked lifelike. Harry looked at the wooden door and brewed his emotions for a while, imagining that the curved words on it were actually snakes crawling. "Salazar Slytherin, you are the greatest of the four." He opened his mouth and said word by word, but to William and Dumbledore, it was just a series of hisses whose meanings could not be understood. After Harry finished speaking, the carved snake pattern suddenly swam quickly. It turned into a green snake-like shadow, and quickly flew towards Harry, who was stunned and had no time to react. "Protego!" William quickly waved his wand, forming an air barrier in front of Harry, but the shadow went straight through it. Dumbledore also reacted quickly and summoned a translucent shield. A sizzling sound was heard. In just a breath, The shadow had bitten through the shield that Dumbledore had conjured, and fell straight into Harry's lightning-shaped scar. The wooden door was suddenly opened, and the hidden map of Hogwarts, the real secret room left by Salazar Slytherin, was quietly waiting for their exploration. Chapter 114, The Secret Room. After the snake-like shadow penetrated Harry's scar, Harry immediately lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. In the darkness, he heard a magnificent voice. "My descendant, I am the great Salazar Slytherin. I have chosen you to open your heart and you will inherit everything from me," the voice hissed. His voice was low and hoarse, and his words were full of temptation, like a venomous snake inviting Eve to taste the fruit. Why? How could it be? Harry's mind was in a mess. He felt a burst of tingling, as if something was stabbing him, but this feeling was not slight, and it made Harry sober up a little. How can I be the descendant of Slytherin? And hasn't he been dead for 1,000 years? In Harry's little head, there was a lot of confusion at the moment. But he gradually realized that as long as he ignored or responded to the voice, the tingling would become less and less. Don't you want my wealth? And my power, my knowledge? Just let go of the resistance, and I will give you everything I have left, and you will be responsible for killing those disgusting thieves and burglars. The voice of the man who called himself Salazar Slytherin became anxious, and Harry felt the stinging sensation even more severe. But then another voice joined in. Get out. Dead thing. Get out of my mind. Take your rags with you. The voice was extremely cold, but it made Harry feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity. His voice revealed pain and anger. I must have heard this person's voice before, but when was it? Harry recalled, and a bed appeared in his mind, and then a warm room. It was a very deep night, a bright light, and a woman. But his memory was rudely interrupted, and the cold voice was cursing, "Get out. You are dead. Dead. Old fool. Let me go, you are my descendant. Give up resistance. Everything you have belongs to me," said the man who called himself Salazar Slytherin. Although he called himself Salazar Slytherin, he gave Harry the feeling that he was not like the Great Four Giants at all, but rather like his cousin Daly, the bully who only bullied those weaker than himself. The quarrel between the two voices continued, as if there was a fierce conflict between them. "All of you get out." Harry was already feeling a little irritated, he said loudly, his voice was as loud as thunder. But at this moment, a beam of shining light suddenly broke through the darkness here. It was like a spear of light shot down from the mythical Silver City. "Wake up, Harry," Professor Dumbledore's voice suddenly echoed in the darkness. Looking at the beam of light, Harry gradually lost consciousness. But in the next moment, he suddenly woke up. "William? And Professor Dumbledore?" Harry asked in confusion. He found himself lying on William's knees, feeling a burning pain in his cheeks, and a spicy and bitter taste in his mouth, which reminded him of Ron's socks. Professor Dumbledore held his wand and squatted beside him. "Just after you shouted that, you suddenly fainted. We tried many methods to wake you up," William said with a wondering look. Before Dumbledore thought of a reliable method, he had tried physical and chemical methods, including but not limited to pinching the renjong, slapping, feeding coffee mate and other methods, which were enough to make a certain potion's professor jealous and want to knock Harry unconscious, and then repeated himself. "Yes, I just heard two voices. And a woman." Harry suddenly sat up and said loudly. Okay, we can discuss those after we return to the castle. Now there is a Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets waiting for us to explore." Dumbledore suddenly interrupted him. He glanced at William and shook his head slightly. But even if he didn't say it, William could guess it. No wonder the Gaunt family is almost bankrupt, and no one will come to open the Chamber of Secrets. William thought to himself, what else can help Salazar Slytherin achieve his goal of cleaning up the Muggle-borns better than leaving a bunch of with soul or consciousness? As arrogant as he is, of course he will not believe in the ability of anyone else, even if he is his own offspring. So Salazar left the Chamber of Secrets and the Chamber of Secrets, saved part of his soul or consciousness here, and set up a very strict mechanism. In order to ensure the success rate, those who can come here must be his descendants who respect him very much. They will naturally dream of inheriting Salazar Slytherin's power and become tools for his rebirth. But his plan must have gone wrong. His heirs are not fools. Perhaps they have guessed something, or perhaps they have been warned, so they will only use the basilisk, but will never open this room. William guessed what the descendants of Slytherin were thinking. Of course, they would like Slytherin to return so that they can rule the entire wizarding world again, But that cannot be at the expense of themselves, and they don't want to bring back an ancestor casually and ride on their heads. When the Gaunt family fell, perhaps this secret was lost with a certain generation of family heirs. It is worthy of being a college with a full talent tree for infighting, he couldn't help but sigh. But Salazar Slytherin would never have thought that it would take nearly 1,000 years for someone to open this room, and only a small piece of soul belonged to his descendants. That descendant was even more arrogant than he was. But now it's time to see this real secret room. William rubbed his hands. He felt that he had been touching his bag more and more recently. This is a good thing. When Harry fainted, he had already taken a brief look at the secret room. It seemed to correspond to the brain of the statue of Salazar Slytherin, and there were several large rooms inside. They were in a study room that also served as a laboratory. There were many jars on the shelves against the wall, as well as a complete set of tools for brewing potions and several thick manuscripts. William simply flipped through notes and found that they were all enchanted and would not turn into ash and become unreadable after 1,000 years. As for the formulas, although many of the potions have better substitutes in modern times, there are still some interesting contents. What are these materials? The blood ash vine picked at midnight, the two-headed centipede powder cultivated by watering snake blood, and the bones of innocent people who died from the banshee's wail. William, Professor Dumbledore. I think you have to come and see this, Harry suddenly shouted. Chapter 115, Secrets from Thousands of Years Ago. William, Professor Dumbledore. I think you have to come and see this, Harry suddenly shouted. William followed his voice and ran to a room not far away. He found Harry standing behind a desk pointing at a thick notebook, motioning him to check it with Professor Dumbledore, who came back from the other end. The notebook seemed very important. Because it said on the cover very important. If you wake up, read it as soon as possible. Let's take a look. Dumbledore showed a serious expression, holding his wand and standing next to notebook, gently reaching out to open it. This time he was very well prepared to ensure that there would be no sudden attacks. But nothing happened. They saw the title page of the notebook. If you feel confused, always remember, you are Salazar Slytherin, the greatest wizard in history, one of the 4 giants who founded Hogwarts. The dark green ink flashed a faint light. You are. William felt a little strange. Normally, shouldn't the self-proclaimed name of the notebook be I am? They turned a new page. We met on the square of St. Martin. Below is a moving sketch, depicting a story that happened in winter. People came from all directions to watch the scene of hanging wizards. There were 3 stakes in the square. The one in the middle was extremely handsome, wearing a full set of aristocratic clothes. The witch on his left showed a painful expression of overexertion, and she was changing the color of her hair. Gentle Helga likes to make everything look normal, but even muggles feel that her performance seems a bit excessive. A small text passed by. The one tied on the right was also a young and beautiful witch, who was also making her body thinner and thicker. Godric is always the last one to arrive. Another line of bullet screen passed by. A vague figure fell from the sky, stood on the stake, and looked provocatively at the angry priest holding the Bible. Soon, he became the 4th stake and was tied to the square. The 4 stakes were talking and laughing. They undoubtedly knew each other. Although William and the others could not hear what they were saying, they knew from their happy expressions that they were good friends having fun together. Soon, the angry people rushed to the square and set all the stakes on fire. In an instant, the flames shot up into the sky. The 4 of them showed painful and desperate expressions and struggled with all their might. But they suddenly flew up. This seems to describe the story of when the 4 giants met, William guessed. The notebook automatically turned to the 2nd page. It was in an empty alley with thick snow on the ground. The 4 wizards suddenly appeared in the middle of the picture. They are few fools. Godric has a strange smell of burning on his body. Helga's fireproof spell always seems to miss her hair. They are not even as good as that little girl from Ravenclaw. The small words floating by seemed to be explaining, and seemed to be simply showing off. The 4 of them walked into a small bar, where they talked and laughed and drank steaming butterbeer. Helga took a big gulp and almost burned her tongue. What poor muggles, isn't it ridiculous to regard everything they know nothing about as pagan? A line of words floated over Slytherin's head. That seemed to be what he said. Oh, friend, do you think these muggles are willing to spend some time to understand us? Yes. So I think the most urgent task is to let these poor muggles understand the magical world, Cryfinder said. I think, Cryfinder continued, only by training more wizards, and only when the power of wizards grows, Big enough to make muggles accustomed to it. Can wizards survive freely in this world? He stood up slowly and paced in the bar. But now, our wizarding world has many sects, and some wizards even take pleasure in bullying and killing muggles. If it is not corrected and stopped in time, it will be difficult for the wizarding world to survive. I've seen this paragraph. It's set in Hogwarts, a history of the school, Harry said in a low voice. He turned his head to look at William and Dumbledore, who were not surprised at all, and turned back awkwardly. Indeed, I think we are watching Salazar Slytherin's record of his past. Dumbledore said softly that they had seen that the four giants were preparing to establish a magic school. Slytherin contributed an abandoned castle of his family. As recorded in Hogwarts, a history of the school, the clever Ravenclaw figured out a way to scare away the residents of the nearby town with snakes, and the brave Gryffindor gave them a sum of gold and let them live in their own manner. William was finally surprised to learn that the broken and separated magic stairs in Hogwarts Castle were actually proposed by Hufflepuff to keep them like that. The four giants worked together to formulate the curriculum of Hogwarts. Ravenclaw was responsible for teaching transfiguration, Gryffindor was responsible for the spell class, Hufflepuff explained magical animals and flying, Slytherin shared his potion formulas and skills, and other wizards were hired for astrology, astronomy, and magic runes. At that time, Hogwarts even had special courses in numbers and grammar, which were taught by a professor named Fiwan from Oxford. William also learned that the room of requirement he often used was a gift from the Ministry of Magic. The then minister, Mr. Polixenes, cast a mind signal receiving spell on the portrait. As long as you walk in front of the portrait and think about what you need urgently, the room behind the portrait will be automatically prepared. But at that time, the first quarrel between the four giants occurred. Slytherin hoped to accept the boys of the two dark wizard families, Dullahove and August, and Gryffindor mentioned that the mudblood Bilpan was rejected by him because Bilpan's father was a wizard, and his mother was an ordinary person. Was the definition of mudblood so strict at that time? William thought that in today's magic world, only when both parents are ordinary people will they be given the derogatory name of mudblood by some pure-blood arrogance. They continued to read the notebook and saw that Slytherin used the unforgivable curse to kill the dark wizards who invaded Hogwarts, and then they faced an extremely difficult war. The dark wizards, together with skeletons, goblins, giants, and dementors, launched an attack on Hogwarts, and the Big Four, together with the centaurs and the Ministry of Magic, fought them off in 3 days and 3 nights. Since then, Hogwarts has disappeared from all maps, and its exact location is no longer known to outsiders. The notebook turned to the next page. 2 words appeared on it. I'm leaving, although I'm reluctant. I have to admit that Hogwarts no longer needs my protection. And I will go to a distant place to explore the most profound black magic. I believe that only through this method can we truly defeat the dark side of the magic world. The long and macy small words showed how excited Salazar Slytherin was when he wrote this. But there is no mention of the Chamber of Secrets here. Not a single word. Harry was keenly aware of this. This notebook has not yet come to an end. Dumbledore shook his head and replied. He turned to the next page. 10 years later, I quietly returned to Hogwarts, Salazar Slytherin wrote, not letting the small words suddenly appear, but writing the record by hand. I believed that I would die in the cold north. But I didn't. On the contrary, I heard a voice. He saved me and told me in my dream that my fate would not end here. I must, and only I can save Hogwarts and even all wizards. The further this record went, the larger the letters became, and he must have used so much force that some places penetrated a paper cup and the ink soaked into the next page. Why don't they believe me? Why? What I said is true. Continuing to indulge those mudbloods to seize the power of wizards will only lead us to destruction faster. It must be because they are too stupid to understand. On the new page, the signs of madness are intensifying. William looked at Dumbledore. His expression was very solemn. I don't know if Salazar Slytherin ever returned to Hogwarts or contacted other founders after he left. Perhaps the following content will tell us more. Harry swallowed and whispered. The notebook turned to another page. Those thieves? Thieves? How dare they? How dare they? It turns out that I was right. I have always been right. The more mudbloods there are, the more wizards there will be, but the world can only accommodate a limited number of wizards, otherwise they will definitely be noticed. We must kill them at all costs. Salazar Slytherin's words have become almost unrecognizable. I just wanted to kill a few mudbloods, but they stopped me and used dark magic to attack me. They don't know what I learned from my travels. I'm stronger, but so are they. That damn Gryffindor, his sword is still fast. I hid here secretly. I used to share some courses that were not allowed in the castle here, and they didn't know, but I can't go out anymore. They must have set up a lot of spells to find me. Gulp. William heard Harry swallowing his saliva. To be honest, he was the same. The methods left by the despicable Herpo were all traps, but I still created a basilisk. Its fangs and eyes must be able to easily kill those mudbloods. Unfortunately, I don't have time to wait for it to grow up. I'm dying. In order to ensure that I can kill those mudbloods, I will leave a part of my soul, which will be reborn in my most loyal descendants and be responsible for completing my mission after their death. The first part of the story is taken from Hogwarts, A History of the School. After sorting and annotating, the second half of the content is original. The next chapter will be about 10 minutes later. Chapter 116, Suspicion. It was almost the end of the notebook. Salazar Slytherin's madness could no longer be concealed. His handwriting was so sloppy that it was almost indistinguishable, and the letters were sometimes large and sometimes small. William turned to the last page. What did I do? What did I do? That devil's voice. He controlled me. He deceived me. After splitting off half of my soul, at the last moment of my life, I miraculously became myself again. But this was not enough to undo the big mistake I made. I told the basilisk not to leave the Chamber of Secrets, and wrote to Rowena, telling her everything I saw in that dream, asking her to warn my descendants never to come here. This will be my grave, and I will disappear with him and his secrets. The color of the words you wrote became lighter and lighter, and it almost became transparent in the end. But at the end, there was a line of very neat words that were obviously written later. Self-sacrificing old fool. Do you think you really won? The notebook ended here. For Merlin's sake, after reading Salazar Slytherin's notes, William felt that he was not feeling well. Is this something that happened in the original world but no one knows about it, or is it something that happened in the world I traveled to? He guessed secretly, but he really had no idea. This world is already very different from the magical world that William knew in his previous life. The dream mentioned in Salazar Slytherin's notes, and that voice, made William suddenly think of Nicholas Flamel. He also got the inspiration from the angel in a dream and made the Philosopher's Stone. Hogwarts, A History of the School mentioned that after Slytherin left the castle, he traveled around and cruelly killed all the dark wizards he met with black magic. But 10 years later, they never heard any news from him again. He seemed to have suddenly disappeared. Dumbledore closed the notebook with a solemn face. As a conclusion, Hogwarts, A History of the School recorded that 50 years after Salazar Slytherin left Hogwarts, the remaining 3 giants sat together and missed their old friend. There was no mention of Salazar Slytherin turning against them later, to the point of hatred that he needed to keep the basilisk and wanted to exterminate all the muggles. But Lady Cassandra also predicted that Slytherin would definitely return to school and return to Hogwarts, and she would witness that moment. William added that Lady Cassandra was the professor of divination at Hogwarts at the time, a true prophet. Whether it was the attack of the dark wizards or the departure of Slytherin, her predictions had almost never been wrong. Salazar Slytherin's notes seemed to have suddenly changed into a different person. Before, he was knowledgeable, responsible, and almost single-handedly organized the 4 giants of Hogwarts, but later he suddenly became a madman who wanted to kill all wizards of ordinary origin. And this is not all the doubts. Why did he use you at the beginning of the notebook? What is the purpose of this notebook? Who is the it that will notice? What is the truth that a voice told him? And where did Salazar Slytherin go? If he died, where's his body? A series of questions emerged in William's mind. I think it's best to keep everything we saw today secret for the time being, and don't reveal it to anyone. If it is accidentally leaked, I'm afraid there will be very serious consequences. Dumbledore looked at Harry and then at William. He began to regret bringing the 2 of them to explore the Chamber of Secrets. Of course, Professor, I will never tell anyone. Harry nodded seriously. It was the first time he saw Dumbledore showing such a serious expression to him. William also nodded in response. As for now, maybe we can see what exactly is left for us in this Chamber of Secrets. Dumbledore made a suggestion. This was of course welcomed by William. They began to search in the secret room of the Chamber of Secrets, gathering all the discoveries together, and then slowly browsing and recording them. This may be the largest Dropbox William has touched. The most here are of course various books, manuscripts recording various spells, recipes for brewing mysterious potions, and various rituals and symbolic illustrations with a mystical significance. In particular, there is a handwritten runic analysis that surprised William. Unlike Babel, who teaches ancient magic at Hogwarts and focuses on translating, understanding, and writing runes, this runic analysis explains the use of runes from a magical perspective. It spends a lot of chapters explaining how to organize and write rune words, the internal logic between runes, and how to adjust the rune array so that they can accurately achieve the effects that wizards want. There is just a little problem. A little problem. This book is written in ancient magic, and there are no English annotations. William needs to drag out 3 heavy references just to understand the catalog, not to mention reading the text in sight and applying it. For Merlin's sake, is English not good enough for you? He lamented. I think that in Salazar Slytherin's time, ancient runes were not ancient runes, they were just runes. Dumbledore glanced at the book in William's hand and laughed teasingly. William, I'm afraid that if you want to understand this book now, you have to spend a lot of time in Professor Babel's class, but in addition to these, there are many other gains in Salazar Slytherin's collection. In that era, almost every great wizard was a generalist. They would specialize in a particular field, but they would never give up any opportunity to gain knowledge about magic. William was surprised to find that Salazar Slytherin also studied how to make a wand and how to make a flying broom. This kind of knowledge is now kept as the most precious secret in a very small number of wizard families. In addition, they also found many precious materials that are now almost extinct. Blood silver of goblins, fairy powder, silent birds, fangs of poisonous leopards, bones of 5-legged beasts. They were kept in a cabinet that was half a head taller than Snape. William checked it out. The cabinet was enchanted, so that even after 1,000 years, some of these materials were still in a barely usable state. And the cabinet itself was a precious treasure. Harry, Professor Dumbledore. William clapped his hands to attract their attention. I think we have to make a suitable distribution plan. These collections are too precious. If they were put in the outside world and exchanged for gold galleons, they might even buy the entire Diagon Alley. Of course, that is on the premise that there will be no price drop due to dumping, and buyers who can afford it can be found. I don't need it. Anyway, I won't use these things. I mean, Professor William, you can take them all. Because it was you who found and opened the Chamber of Secrets. Harry was stunned for a while, and said very straightforwardly. That won't do, Harry. Do you know how much these things are worth? William shook his head. He was not the kind of person who liked to undermine his own rewards. Besides, if it weren't for Harry, they would never have been able to find and open the Chamber of Secrets. He leaned close to Harry's ear and said a number. Hiss. Really? Harry felt like he bit his tongue. A mountain of gold appeared in his mind, which was much more spectacular than when Hagrid first took him to the Vault of Gringotts during the summer vacation. Of course, but it wouldn't be a good idea to simply sell them for gold galleons. I believe you already have a suitable plan, William, since you took the initiative to propose this idea, Dumbledore said with a smile, and he put down the darkest magic, powerful dark spells and curses in his hand. Salazar Slytherin's collection also had no shortage of books on dark magic, and they actually accounted for a very important part, but William was not interested in them, and even if he was interested, he couldn't put them out. Well, I do have a plan. I believe that these things can only play the greatest value in my hands, whether it is the knowledge or the magic materials. I believe that even you, the professor, will not object to this, right? William cleared his throat, and his words made Harry look sideways. Dumbledore is the most powerful wizard in the world, a master of alchemy, and he has discovered the 12 uses of dragon's blood. Of course not, but Dumbledore nodded and replied with a smile. Harry wondered if he had heard something wrong. The easiest way is for me to buy them all. Of course, that will be a lot of money. We need to find Gringotts to make an overall valuation of them and divide them into 3 equal parts. After that, I will write an IOU and pay off the principal and interest in several installments, and finally redeem them all. William proposed a simple and crude plan. What about the second plan? Dumbledore shook his head. Although this plan was simple, it was too complicated, and he didn't need so many gold galleons. Besides, he knew that William would certainly not come up with such a boring idea. We can use these things to jointly establish a joint stock company, in which each of us will hold a portion of the shares. All the benefits we get from these knowledge and materials will eventually belong to this company. Of course, I hope I can hold more than 51%, but I will also use other things to make up for the difference. Chapter 117 The Statue and Helena. Seeing Dumbledore and Harry's confused expressions, William had to give them a brief explanation of the relevant knowledge of joint stock companies. That certainly sounds interesting. Hearing William's proposal, Dumbledore raised his eyebrows with interest. The wizarding world also has various companies, but few are joint stock companies. Most of them are run by families, or are limited partnerships formed by several acquaintances. For example, the famous Flying Broom Company, Sweeping Broom Company, founded in 1926, was jointly established by three brothers of the Orleton family. The Comet Trading Company was founded by two athletes of the Falmouth Falcons, Randolph Cage and Basil Houghton. So if you don't object, I will find someone to draft the specific rules, and we will have a long time to discuss these things later. William made a suggestion. Establishing a joint stock company is not only the best way to distribute the wealth left by Salazar Slytherin, but also an important foreshadowing for his next plan. Being able to pull Harry Potter and Dumbledore onto his chariot may play a crucial role in dealing with those pure-blood families who will sooner or later realize William's threat and want to find a way to strangle him. Of course, I think what we need most now is a comfortable night's sleep. Dumbledore smiled and nodded. William naturally didn't believe that the White Wizard didn't understand his intentions, but he was also sure that Dumbledore would never become an obstacle in his plan, because even in the entire wizarding world, there might be no one who wants to see some practical changes more than Dumbledore. The White Wizard just realized that he was not suitable to be the one with power as he grew older. But this does not mean that Dumbledore has lost his heart. After Dumbledore agreed, Harry naturally had no reason to care deeply. He originally had an indifferent attitude towards this windfall, not to mention that he was still immersed in the strange dream just now. The notebook of Salazar Slytherin and the books on the dark arts were taken away by Dumbledore himself for preservation, and William called the house elf Lalo to lead the other house elves to empty the place. Mr. Buffalo, we have found 3 snake sloughs, and they are all well preserved as you said, Lalo said in his unique shrill voice. Snake sloughs are different from torn snake skins with flesh and blood. Snake sloughs are the skins that the basilisks naturally shed, and they have been precipitated for a long time, which is a rarer material than snakeskin. He took William and Harry to the underground factory through apparition, and sent Harry back to the entrance hall of the castle. He could put on his invisibility cloak and return to Gryffindor Tower from there. As for William, he had a sweet trouble to solve. He got rich too quickly this time. Looting Salazar Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets brought him a huge amount of wealth, a living basilisk, thousands of years of snake sloughs, a door with personality or at least intelligence, a large amount of precious knowledge and formulas, and many materials that are almost extinct in modern times. But most of them must be reasonably transformed before they can be used by him. If nothing else, feeding this basilisk is a big problem. Although Hagrid and Professor Kettleburn should be willing to help. But these materials and formulas must be dragged to poor guy to work. William thought carefully about where he could find people to help. He must be one of us, tight-lipped, have a deep understanding of potions and alchemy, and live in the castle, with a lot of time. Soon, he had to admit that it was almost impossible to find such a talent among the students he knew. Gemma Farley was indeed a good choice, but she was now in the 5th grade, and the IELTS exams had consumed most of her energy. Then consider the professor's possibilities. Professor McGonagall is no good, she will turn me into a wall and lock me in a corner of the castle. As for Professor Flitwick, his potion and alchemy skills seem to be average. Professor Sprout, William considered the professors one by one, and he finally had to admit that in the entire Hogwarts castle, apart from Dumbledore himself, there was only one person who could be perfectly suited for this job, but that person was actually the least likely to be invited. The only one is Snape. He decided to write a letter to Snape tomorrow morning and invite him to talk. Even if it doesn't work, at most he will be ridiculed by him again. William spent a lot of time to separate a room in the basement, store these things, and cast many heavy spells on the door to ensure that it would not be opened accidentally, and then return to the castle. When he returned to the common room, it was already late. William looked at the statue of Rowena Ravenclaw. She shook her head, and pointed her left finger in the direction of the boys' dormitory, indicating that Gabe was there. Will she know something? He thought of Slytherin's sudden return. This statue should have been left in the common room of Ravenclaw since the era of the Big Four. Maybe Rowena Ravenclaw would have told her some secrets. Why not give it a try? William walked in front of the marble statue and asked the question, Do you know that Salazar Slytherin came back once after leaving Hogwarts? The statue showed a blank expression and shook its head slightly in response. This did not disappoint William. Of course she doesn't know, a cold and empty female voice suddenly said. Who is it? Isn't there no one in the common room? William subconsciously looked in the direction of the voice and found a transparent figure slowly falling from the niche behind the statue. She was wearing a long dress with complicated designs and her head was raised high. She was the resident ghost of Ravenclaw, but this was the first time William really saw her. Ms. Grey, William called her name and she nodded in response. But seeing the figure of Lady Grey, the expression of the marble statue became obviously stiff. She bit her lower lip slightly, but her eyes showed a trace of panic like a frightened rabbit. The statue seemed to be afraid of Lady Grey. She is just a doll made by Rowena Ravenclaw, a companion to accompany me and chat with me occasionally. Lady Grey glanced at the statue, and she quickly turned her head away, as if the courage she had finally mustered up was taken away from her body. But you. I don't think you should know that Salazar Slytherin has ever returned to the castle. Even if it was placed 1,000 years ago, this matter is a real secret. She looked at William again, and looked at him carefully. I don't seem to know you, and this has nothing to do with you. Lady Grey's words were very straightforward and offensive. I'm William Buffalo, and I just transferred to Hogwarts this year. But I happen to know you. You are Helena Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw believes that you are not qualified to inherit her knowledge, but you stole your mother's crown and fled to the forest of Albania, where you were killed by the Bloody Baron. William introduced himself with a smile, but his words were more offensive than Miss Grey's. It was like directly untying her wounds, sprinkling salt on them, and stepping on them hard. His words attracted the statue's attention back. She blinked and looked at William in disbelief, with her mouth open as if to say, "Brother, are you so brave?" The statue even wanted to applaud. "Although I do have something I want to know, it's not my turn to beg you." A ghost. In a humble way, William thought to himself that this statue obviously had a relationship with Miss Grey, and even if it was simply because she was Gabe's pillow, he couldn't let her be bullied like this without saying anything. "How dare you?" Miss Grey's face turned pale, and her transparent chest was rising and falling violently, as if it could still breathe. "I want to know what happened after Salazar Slytherin returned to the castle," William asked bluntly. Helena Ravenclaw might be one of the few people who knew the whole story. "I have nothing to say to you, and this has nothing to do with you." Miss Grey frowned, and it was her strict family education and cultivation that made her suppress her anger and not tear the boy's face. Her body sank, and she wanted to pass through the floor and leave here. "But only I can save the Bloody Baron. He was petrified by the eyes of the basilisk, and a special potion needs to be prepared." William's words made her stop. She naturally knew that the secret room in the castle was opened some time ago, but Miss Grey also learned from William for the first time that it was actually a basilisk that did it. "You are just a student, and the professors of the school will naturally help him, not to mention what does he have to do with me?" Miss Grey shook her head. But she did not sink further. Most of her body was still floating on the ground, obviously wanting to hear what William had to say. "I know where the crown of Ravenclaw is." William revealed a card that only a time traveler would know. "You were sent by him?" "No? That's impossible. You must be lying." "No one knows where the crown is." Miss Grey's pupils shrank noticeably, and she took 2 steps back. She even forgot that half of her body was downstairs, and she almost fell down because of it. "You told the boy where it is, didn't you? Just tell me what I want to know, and I promise to bring the crown back, repair it, and make it look like new." William's voice was like a devil. Miss Grey wanted to refuse very much, but his conditions were too attractive. As the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, she naturally didn't want to be trapped in this state of neither life nor death, but she had a biggest regret in her heart that she could never make up for. She believed that she had the courage to move on, but it was this thing that kept her from moving forward. "How do I know you won't lie to me?" 10 minutes later in the next chapter. Chapter 118. "Don't you know? How do I know you won't lie to me?" Miss Grey asked cautiously. She once told this secret to another boy, who also promised many things, but eventually disappeared and never came back as he promised. "You don't know, but you don't have anyone else to trust, right?" William didn't think that the suspicious Miss Grey could find a second person to do this. Of course she wanted to redeem her regrets and get the crown back, but she couldn't give any satisfactory reward. Miss Grey stared at William, her eyes seemed to see through him, but he didn't waver at all, just looked back. She finally sighed deeply. "I don't know much, Godric wanted to tell me at that time, but the woman quickly drove me out of the room. She is not suitable to know these things. She has no talent to bear these secrets, my mother said. Ms. Grey smiled miserably. I only know that Salazar Slytherin did return to school, but he seemed to be a completely different person at that time. Godric said that he was ill again, and he was not the Salazar they knew now. He was not the one they knew now, William repeated. He felt that the word again was very interesting. Yes, I heard that Salazar had been ill before when they were building the school. That time, a dark wizard suddenly broke into the school and killed one of his students. Salazar caught up with the dark wizard and killed him with the unforgivable curse. At that time, Salazar Slytherin seemed to have become a different person, and he had to lock himself up in the dungeon for a long time afterwards, Ms. Grey explained. He has split personality? In normal times, the respected and wise wizard is the main personality, but once he is emotional, the violent secondary personality will come out. William thought of Salazar's notebook. You are as the beginning. He left that notebook at the beginning, not for himself who lost his memory after rebirth, but as an anchor to emphasize the identity of his main personality. Perhaps he left Hogwarts because he felt that after losing his students and killing the Dark Wizard with the unforgivable curse, he could no longer suppress his secondary personality. This was of course just William's guess, but he felt that it should not be too far off. What happened after that? William asked. I don't know. Ms. Grey looked at William provocatively. Why do you think that woman, Rowena Ravenclaw, would tell such a secret to my untalented daughter? But I know who would know this, Ms. Grey suddenly said. Who? She. Ms. Grey suddenly pointed at the statue of Rowena Ravenclaw and said. The statue of Ravenclaw was also confused, slightly opened its mouth, and pointed at itself with its left hand. She wanted to leave the crown to this thing. After hesitating for a moment, she finally chose the name Thing. Why did she suddenly fall seriously ill and be on the verge of death after I ran away with the crown? What a joke. She is that Rowena Ravenclaw, Ms. Grey said disdainfully. The lifespan of wizards is much longer than that of ordinary people. This is not only because of their special physique, but also because they can take various potions to eliminate diseases and prolong their lifespan. William found several potions that can be used to prolong life in Slytherin's collection. She was talking to this statue all day long, and she wanted to separate half of her soul and cleanse her consciousness and give it to it, so that this dead thing could become a human and replace her forever, passing on the knowledge that she was not even willing to share with me. She continued to talk to herself. So I stole the crown and took away that part of her soul. Because she didn't split her soul by killing, the distance between the two parts of the soul was alienated, which would naturally reflect on her body. So if you want to know the truth of the year, go find the crown, repair it, and bring it back to this thing. There is the knowledge passed down by the Ravenclaw family, and the pure soul she left behind. After Miss Grey finished speaking, she walked along the floor and left the common room, and William did not stop her. The statue was stunned. She didn't remember what the Grey Lady said, but she seemed to remember something and blinked her eyes, but she was just a statue, so she couldn't even speak, let alone cry. Good night. I will bring the tiara back as soon as possible. William patted the statue's waist and walked towards the dormitory. Helena Ravenclaw's answer answered some of his doubts, but it also brought more questions. The tiara is in the room of requirement, but the trouble is that a piece of Voldemort's soul is still attached to it. It is much more difficult to separate a Horcrux than to destroy it. He remembered that after Dumbledore got the Resurrection Stone ring, he paid a hand and only had 1 year of life left to destroy it. But the key now is to complete the Magic Gold project, then remove the Bloody Baron from the petrified state, and find which students Voldemort is possessed by hiding in Hogwarts. William lay down on the velvet bed and covered himself with a quilt. He had a feeling that Voldemort would never sit there and wait for death, but would use all means to struggle. But all this would end before the Christmas holiday. Christmas was less than 2 weeks away. William fell into a dream. He once again came to that dark world, and the warm liquid wrapped around his body, making him feel warm and unwilling to move, but the beam of light seemed to become more dazzling. It broke through the darkness and shone into the ocean. William subconsciously stretched out his hand to cover his eyes, and found that he touched a soft film. What is this? He wanted to tear the film apart with a little force, but suddenly found that he had woken up and sat on the bed. Gabe also woke up, and he licked William's hand, as if to comfort him that it was just a nightmare. This dream seems to have appeared since I came to Hogwarts, and every time it appears, There will be some slight changes. William recalled what Gemma told him when she saw his magic. It was a huge cocoon. It shouldn't be long before it actually changes, William thought. In this dream, he was able to raise his hand and touch the film in front of him. Although he didn't know what had influenced this dream, he was sure that some real changes would happen in the dream soon. Reaching out his right hand and touching Gabe's furry head, William closed his eyes and felt the effect of Nicholas Flamel's spiritual practice on his magic power. This was a slow but real process, and the speed of its growth seemed to be related to the changes in the stars. Get up, nodding with satisfaction, William got up, washed, changed into his robes, and walked towards the auditorium. As always, Penelope, who was used to getting up early, was already sitting at the long table to enjoy breakfast. "Morning," William greeted her. "Morning, William," she was a little surprised, and then quickly responded with a smile. After taking 2 slices of toast and beans in tomato sauce, scrambled eggs, fried steaks, and a cup of coffee, William sat at a long table in the academy. "How was your exploration of the Chamber of Secrets yesterday?" she asked casually, folding the Daily Prophet and putting it aside. William noticed the headline on the front page, "A shocking injustice 50 years ago." Did he really open the Chamber of Secrets? It doesn't say anything useful, it just repeats that the Chamber of Secrets was opened. Myrtle died unexpectedly. Hagrid was believed to have opened the Chamber of Secrets, and the Ministry of Magic broke his wand, Penelope complained. She naturally knew that it was not Hagrid who opened the Chamber of Secrets that year. But this made William think that perhaps this was a foreshadowing of Dumbledore's efforts quietly, and perhaps his next step was to use Malfoy's petrification to alienate Voldemort and his pure-blood family supporters. How should I put it? The harvest is pretty good, William whispered to her about their exploration of the Chamber of Secrets, but omitted the notes of Salazar Slytherin they found, and the fact that he secretly took a door from the Chamber of Secrets. For Merlin's sake. If there's a chance, I would also like to go to the Chamber of Secrets to have a look. Penelope took a big gulp of pumpkin juice. There will be a chance, but not on the next 2 days. Professor Dumbledore still has to make some preparations downstairs. But in a while, I can take you to visit the Chamber of Secrets, William revealed a little. The Chamber of Secrets may be the most suitable place in the whole Hogwarts to expose Voldemort's vest, but the terrain there is too complicated, and Dumbledore has to make some preparations first. Then it's settled, Penelope nodded happily. When William was about to finish his breakfast, Snape walked in from the door of the Great Hall. He frowned and walked straight towards William. "Buffalo, you don't have classes in the morning, right?" Although Snape asked a question, his tone was affirmative. "Yes," William replied. He wanted to talk to Snape as soon as possible. But since Snape came to him first, this was obviously a better situation. "The potion of Mandrake is almost ready," he pursed his lips and continued, "We need to find a way to make the Bloody Baron absorb the potion." "What the hell?" William's face was full of question marks. "You don't know?" He always thought that as long as the potion was brewed, Snape could feed it to the Bloody Baron. After all, in the original book, the petrified Nick who was almost headless was unpeeled in this way. "Why should I know?" Snape answered in annoyance. He was a potion master. Potions masters brew potions for living people. No one had ever told him how to pour the potion down the ghost's throat. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 119, Magic that is very unmagical. Under the castle. In the office of the potions professor. The Bloody Baron was in a strange gray-black solid state, suspended in the air of the office by a rope. To be honest, if he was not a ghost, covered in blood, and his image was too gloomy, some people might interpret it as Snape playing some strange tricks on him. I have never thought about how to inject potions into ghosts. William carefully circled the Bloody Baron twice. He observed that there was some purple fluorescent liquid on the floor under Baron. Before he came, Snape must have tried to force injection. In William's impression, there are differences between ghosts. A very special ghost like Peeves can have a very obvious impact on reality, while Moaning Myrtle has an unusual connection with water. Not only can she make the bathroom full of water, but she can also move quickly along the pipes. But nearly headless Nick and the Bloody Baron seem to be of the conventional type. No one has thought of that. In response to William's question, Snape rolled his eyelids in annoyance. Then how did you move him here? William asked a question. After being petrified, it seems to have some weight and can be affected by the flowing gas. Snape pointed to the corner of the room, where there was a large fan, which made William think of a somewhat funny picture. In the middle of the night when no one in the castle was there, Snape desperately waved the large fan to drive the Bloody Baron underground. I have tried to let him inhale it in the form of steam, but that would be too slow. It would take at least a week for it to return to normal. Noticing William's eyes, although he didn't know what kind of offensive thing he was thinking, Snape was sure that this bad-tempered buffalo would not be thinking of anything good. Maybe ghosts themselves are a special form of gas? So they can be blown away by the fan, or ingest steam. William suddenly recalled that in the original book, Harry and his friends did attend a ghost's birthday. The food at that time was very rotten. It was said that only in this way could they smell some faint smells. If you want to be in a daze, you can find another place, Snape urged impatiently. The potion has been brewed, and success is about to come. If there is no other way, and if William wants to prove that he can't do it, he is powerless. Snape will never be willing to ask him for help, because their personalities are simply born to clash. I do have an idea, but William did think of a very un-wizard, but perhaps very wizard method. Trying a brand new process that comes up with a brainstorm is of course a very dangerous thing, but it doesn't matter if you try. Anyway, the Bloody Baron has never lived. He can't die more thoroughly. Of course you don't have as many ideas as you do. Snape was halfway through his words when he suddenly realized that what William said was interesting. If you mean to use a larger tube for distillation, then we can go back. He looked at William suspiciously. Wait, William liked Snape's awkward personality very much, because every time he proved himself correct, Snape's awkward expression would significantly enhance his psychological satisfaction. William called the house elf Lalo. Mr. Buffalo. And Professor Snape. Lalo looked at Snape, who was gloomy, and bowed respectfully. He is your savior? A house elf, Snape said with a sarcastic smile. That's right, William nodded and replied, take us to the nymph. He untied the rope tied to the Bloody Baron from the pot of potion, wrapped it around his right wrist, and took the hand handed by Lalo with his left hand. Professor, he looked at Snape, and the potion's professor snorted in dissatisfaction, then extended two fingers to Lalo's palm and asked him to hold it. The next moment, accompanied by a very brief squeezing feeling, they appeared in the back warehouse of secrets of the nymph. This room, which was cast with a traceless extension spell, can almost be regarded as the most modern place in the entire wizarding world, because it not only has a large combined freezer and a generator, but William also placed some of the laboratory equipment he purchased that requires electricity here. It's a mess. Snape made his evaluation unceremoniously. William tied the Bloody Baron to the operating table next to him, and adjusted his angle so that he could use his shoulders instead of his head to support the ceiling. Then he casually took out 2 cans of iced Coke from the freezer and threw one of them to Snape. Want a bottle? He casually cracked the metal cap of the Coke on the shelf next to him and took a big sip. I didn't know you liked Muggle things so much. Snape took the Coke and said with a slightly sarcastic tone. He certainly knew that William had a mysterious enthusiasm for Muggle things. But this did not prevent Snape from carefully examining the cold bottle in his hand while mocking him. The dark brown liquid inside looked like poison. He had seen Coke before. When he was young, he saw those Muggle children drinking it. Snape shook his head, put those bad memories behind him, and drank a sip of Coke like William. The cold bubbling liquid rushed straight down his throat, with sweetness and a strange but not unpleasant fragrance. This strange combination stimulated his taste buds. Burp, he burped slightly. But there were only him and William here at the moment. Even if it was just a very quiet burp, it was clear like a troll singing at the top of its lungs. Let's get down to business. William, who was holding back his laughter, decided to divert Snape's attraction before he pulled out his wand. What do you want to do? Snape frowned and said unhappily. I think your idea of distilling the potion, generating steam, and letting the Baron slowly ingest it is correct, but the efficiency is too slow. William explained his idea. Snape nodded slightly and did not interrupt him. When facing the knowledge in the unknown field, he knew how to maintain a basic sense of awe. So what we have to do is to extend this idea. If my judgment is correct, we can treat a Bloody Baron as a gas, and what we have to do is to pass it into the potion and stir it at a very fast speed, whether it is heating or increasing the contact area. It is an effective way to speed up the reaction. Stirring gas? Are you kidding? Snape frowned. So we have to do it here. William shook his head, indicating that he was really serious. In the set of experimental equipment he bought before, there was a very expensive stirring kettle, which had heat-conducting oil in the jacket and could be electrically heated to make the reaction temperature reach more than 300 degrees Celsius. With a puff sound, the house elf Lalo reappeared in front of them. Mr. Buffalo, this is the nitrogen you requested. He placed a gas tank on the ground. Thank you, Lalo. William nodded. He moved the mixing kettle over and began to clean it. What do you need me to do? Snape looked at William's operation in a daze. He had never felt so insignificant as a professor of potions. Well, you can pour the mandrake potion into the mixing kettle and drink a bottle of Coke, read some magazines, novels, etc. There's a sofa over there, and there are recent magazines in the cabinet, as well as some novels I like. William hesitated for a moment and gave an answer that made Snape want to take out his wand. Your method had better work. Snape took out a crucible containing the potion from his pocket, which he had cast the traceless extension spell on, with an unhappy face. Then, just as William said, he walked to the cabinet and searched for a while, took a copy of Time magazine, and sat on the sofa. He put on an attitude of standing by and watching, naturally because he wanted to see William suffer a Waterloo. But even if my idea doesn't work, aren't we still on the same level? William thought to himself, but considering that he might need to poach Snape later, he decided not to irritate his already fragile nerves. First, evacuate the reactor, then introduce the potion and the Bloody Baron, and then heat and stir it, skillfully using the displacement method to evacuate the reactor. William carefully and rigorously implemented his plan. To his surprise, everything went very smoothly. Only when drawing the Bloody Baron into the reactor, he encountered some difficulties at the beginning. But when William suddenly had an idea, he poked the wand into the Bloody Baron like when boiling the potion, and after stirring it twice, the Bloody Baron was really drawn into the reactor like a ball of gray-black gas. This is magic. If it weren't for the fact that electrical appliances could not be used in Hogwarts, he wouldn't even have to go through a big detour and run to Hogsmeade to toss. After doing all this, he just quietly waited for the potion to take effect and for the Bloody Baron to be released from his petrified state. Is that all? Snape looked at William suspiciously. He himself adapted quickly. He had already placed 2 magazines beside his knees and picked up a copy of Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. But in Snape's eyes, William was just tossing around with a few jars for a while and then sucking the ghost into the jar. What kind of potion master is this? It's all Heisenberg's fault. If it weren't for his idea, there wouldn't be so many messed up things. But that sealed metal jar that can not only heat but also automatically stir at high speed seems to be quite useful, Snape thought to himself. That's right. If there's no problem with your potion and the ghost does exist in the form of some gas, William replied, and from time to time he would tap the surface of the mixing kettle with his wand. Although he didn't know if this would be of any use, it at least made him look like a serious wizard who knew what he was doing. By the way, Professor, are you interested in doing a part-time job? When Snape was a child, his father was abusive, poor, and lacked love. His mother was a witch but might be mentally unstable, so it was basically unlikely that she would have extra money to buy him a Coke. Chapter 120 But he's very wealthy. Part-time, Snape's eyebrows raised. You want me, Severus Snape, the potions professor at Hogwarts and the head of Slytherin, to work for you like a house elf and personally make these beauty potions for you? His mouth was spurting venom wantonly. Do you still want me to call you respected Mr. Buffalo? William had naturally expected Snape's resistance. On the contrary, if he agreed immediately, William would even feel like he was still dreaming. Perhaps you would like to at least hear about a salary. William pulled a chair over and adjusted the angle so that he could see the reactor and Snape's sallow face with dark circles under his eyes that were more serious than ever before. How? Snape chuckled. A basic salary of 180 gold galleons a month, and a commission from the sales of a portion of the products. We can discuss the specific proportion in detail, William said easily, and he saw Snape's lips twitched slightly. 180 gold galleons a month, which is equivalent to a little more than double Snape's current salary. If he had a choice, he would not want to live in a shabby neighborhood like Spinner's End. Snape has worked at Hogwarts for a limited number of years, and a large part of his salary has to be used to buy raw materials and develop potions, but he doesn't want to sell his own potion formulas at will, so he naturally lives a tight life. But this is not enough for him to sell his dignity. A mere 180 gold galleons, and I don't even know how much sales commission there is. What a joke, Snape shook his head. What if I say that I have a living basilisk and several basilisk snake skins that are at least hundreds of years old? William threw out some more things, and he clearly saw that after hearing about the basilisk, Snape's eyes widened slightly, and he seemed to take a breath. He obviously knew about this matter, and Dumbledore did not hide it from him. The basilisk is full of treasures. This is really not nonsense. From the head to the tip of the tail, almost every part of the basilisk is a top-grade material for potions and alchemy, and it can replace similar materials in most formulas. More importantly, the basilisk is a renewable resource. After the fangs are pulled out, feed it with tooth growth agent. After the blood is drawn, feed it with blood-activating potion. This is not enough. Snape pursed his lower lip and shook his head in reply. In fact, he had long coveted William's basilisk, but Dumbledore said, this was caught by William and his friends through their own efforts and wisdom. Even I have no right to ask them to share it. Maybe you are willing to discuss it with him, for Merlin's sake. He almost said it at that time. Dignity. Basilisk. How good it would be if it wasn't this buffalo. If it weren't for his disgust for William, he would have even begun to seriously consider this matter. But Snape's brain occlusion technique was so superb that his expressionless face hardly revealed any information to William for reference, which made William feel deeply frustrated. Is it really unrealistic to ask Snape to work for you? William thought with some regret. Although he didn't think these things were enough to attract Snape, he should at least be able to ask him for other conditions in exchange. I still have a batch of potion formulas left by Salazar Slytherin, and many almost extinct materials. As if in revenge, William suddenly threw out the most precious card in his hand. Strictly speaking, these things did not all belong to him. Dumbledore also had the right to access them and let Snape develop them. But Snape doesn't know, William thought easily. Who are you talking about? With a whoosh, the novel in Snape's hand fell to the ground. He stood up suddenly and asked, Salazar Slytherin, I still have Nicholas Flamel's alchemy manuscripts. William was careful and deliberately said slowly and word by word. In the magic world, the formula and process of alchemy are more precious knowledge than potions, because alchemy is usually only passed down by alchemists to their disciples, and they are often reserved. Potions is just a discipline derived from alchemy. Things like goblin blood silver, fairy powder, absolute light feathers, fangs and spinal cords of curled winged demons, fangs of poisonous leopards, bones of five-legged beasts, etc. He was like reading the menu, and every time he said a word, Snape's expression became more gloomy. Snape opened his mouth with difficulty. The more precious these things were, the more he hated William, because William controlled him and wanted him to work for him, but the more precious these things were, the less Snape hated William, because unless he had to, who would go against such precious things? Look here, William interrupted Snape, who was brewing his emotions, and asked him to look at the reactor. The purple potion inside was about to turn light pink. Obviously the drug power was being absorbed quickly, and the gray black blood Manbaro was close to transparent milky white. I think we are about to succeed. Restraining his excitement, William lowered the temperature of the reactor. The Bloody Baron eventually turned back to the transparent grayish-white color of the ghost. He opened the reactor, and the gas squeezed out from the narrow mouth, slowly condensing into a roughly human outline. But after the human outline, it took him a long time to finally transform into a face. I didn't turn it stupid. William was a little worried. The mixing kettle was stirring very fast, and Baron was compressed in a very small space, so he had to be careful not to get claustrophobia. However, the Bloody Baron's current appearance did look a little funny, like a transparent version of the Michelin tire man. Do you remember who you are? Snape glanced at William and asked the Michelin directly. I am. The transparent Michelin opened his mouth. His eyes looked empty and blank. You are the Bloody Baron, the ghost of Slytherin, Snape said loudly. I am the Bloody Baron, the transparent Michelin repeated slowly, and he also raised his hand with an oval end and pointed at himself. He blinked, as if the name of the Bloody Baron had touched him. You were commissioned by Rowena Ravenclaw to bring Helena Ravenclaw back to Hogwarts, but you accidentally killed her and committed suicide out of remorse, William said quickly, and his words made Snape look sideways. I think we should stimulate him, otherwise it will take him a long time to remember things, William explained. Although his words were heartbreaking and salty, they had an immediate effect. Helena, the Bloody Baron shouted hollowly and loudly. As he repeated the name Helena, his originally transparent and fluffy body began to become more substantial. In just 2 or 3 breaths, The Bloody Baron returned to his original appearance, with empty eyes, thin face. And even the silver bloodstains on his robes did not change at all. "Bloody Baron, do you remember what happened before?" Snape asked seriously. Before, the ghost showed a blank expression. He closed his eyes, as if he was recalling something. "I observed the Slytherin students, as the headmaster said, and wanted to find those who behaved abnormally. That night, I saw the first-year boy with white hair sneak out of the common room and go to a classroom." The Bloody Baron finally opened his mouth, speaking slowly and dryly. It seemed that it was very difficult for him to say so much all of a sudden. "What happened next?" Snape urged anxiously. "The last time he listened to a ghost's lecture was when he was in Hogwarts, not to mention that he had always been self-taught in the history of magic. After that, I saw." The Bloody Baron opened his mouth and closed it again. He looked around repeatedly, and suddenly rushed to the corner of the room. Wait a minute, William and Snape wanted to stop him at the same time, but the Bloody Baron got into a notebook that William had placed there, quickly turned to the latest page, and at the same time the pen next to him flew up, and began to quickly sketch a picture with stick drawings. It was in a shabby classroom. A boy sat in the corner, facing the door, playing with his wand in his hand. Another boy in a hood walked in, followed by a huge figure. "Bloody Baron, did you see the boy's face clearly?" William pointed at the boy who came in later. The notebook turned to a new page, and the Bloody Baron began to describe his appearance. Most of his face was blocked in the shadow and could not be seen, but William and Snape took a breath at the same time. They had recognized his identity because the boy had very prominent buck teeth and was very tall. Marcus Flint, William and Snape said his name at the same time. For the sake of Merlin's pigtails, this will definitely set off a new wizard civil war. Snape sighed like a groan, but the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Obviously, Snape's mood was not as resistant as his words sounded. The Flint family of the Sacred 28 felt that the blood of the Malfoy family, who were also pure-blooded, was not pure enough. This could certainly be a front-page headline for the top Daily Prophet. If Rita Skeeter and her rumor-mongering quill knew about this, she would be excited and crazy. "I think we all agree that this matter is a secret for the time being." Snape looked at William, and at this moment, William's face suddenly seemed not so annoying in his eyes. "Of course, Professor." William also nodded. "Although Buffalo has a flamboyant personality, likes to show off, and brings muggle things into potions, and has no respect for elders, does not respect the discipline of Hogwarts, and violates school rules, he is quite wealthy." Snape racked his brains to come up with a suitable compliment. "As for the job you mentioned, I will consider taking it," he said in a low voice. His voice was almost as low as a mosquito. "Oh, by the way, Professor, you can't just take that job. You have to study these books by yourself first, and then pass the exams." William was stunned for a moment before he realized what the potions professor wanted to say. He quickly corrected Snape's misunderstanding and took out a pile of books from his shoulder bag. Basics of Chemistry, Principles of Chemical Physics, Basics of Organic Chemistry, Chemistry Laboratory Manual, 3rd edition. So, in Snape's mind, William's face became ugly again. Chapter 121. What is a resume killer? However, Snape still did not refuse to keep the reference materials provided by William. "I will tell Professor Dumbledore about Marcus Flint." He put away the reference materials and left Secrets of the Nymph and walked towards the castle gate. Unlike William, Snape was a very traditional wizard. He never thought that it was a decent thing to use the house elf to operate. Tisk, even if that means he has to walk half a point more. William took himself another bottle of happy water and pried open the lid on the operating table. The ghost Bloody Baron had already broken away from the notebook and was staring at William with a gloomy expression, his empty eyes circling back and forth on the Coke bottle. Snape had explained to him what happened to him before leaving, so at this moment he had an inexplicable sense of awe for William. Is this the idea that this boy came up with? The Bloody Baron felt a little unbelievable. "You want to try it?" William raised the bottle in his hand and threw it to the Bloody Baron. He knew nothing about the changes that had taken place in this ghost, but he was really interested. It seemed that after being thrown into the mixing kettle, the Bloody Baron suddenly had a strong ability to influence reality, and could even possess objects and control them, just like in many literary works. Seeing the flying Coke, the Bloody Baron moved closer and let the Coke bottle float in the air. The dark brown cold liquid flew out of the bottle mouth, crossed a curved line, and was slowly taken into his mouth. This was a somewhat inexplicably terrifying experience. William saw that the Coke entered the Bloody Baron's body, but did not enter his stomach or digestive tract. Instead, it spread out, gradually dyeing his transparent ghost body brown, and then slowly turned back to a transparent state. It was very magical. Are there any limitations to your ability? For example, you can't possess particularly complex things, or the duration is limited, William asked. The Bloody Baron seemed to be a very good case. If this possession ability could be used on machine tools or assembly lines that use robotic arms to complete processing, it would be so convenient. I don't know, the ghost shook his head. Until now, he was still in a state of confusion, but Bloody Baron could feel that some real changes seemed to have taken place in him. They made him feel that although he was dead, he suddenly seemed to be alive again. Then do you know what happened after you died, or were petrified? William changed his angle. The upper limit of his ability could be tested slowly. Whether this phenomenon could be replicated was the most important thing. I seem to have forgotten. Bloody Baron's eyes showed a blank look. I only remember that it seemed very dark and cold. I was covered in blood. I wanted to go down, but I couldn't see any road ahead. Going back was dark again. I could only wander in that forest. His answer was obscure and vague. But if William put himself in the perspective of a time traveler, it would not be difficult to guess something. The deadly eyes of the basilisk made Bloody Baron seem to be dead in part, so he could face the choice of moving forward or backward again, but he was not completely dead, so the road ahead was blocked. It was naturally impossible to go back. Because that was resurrection. What caused these changes was either Snape's pot, which could be used as an antidote to the poison, or the process of heating and stirring, or the products of their interaction. William concluded, if the will of the Bloody Baron is not an isolated case, then after going through the process of deleting and retraining, it needs to be reminded of its memory or consciousness before it can recover. He thought of a better idea. What if I don't remind it? Can it be used to reshape a false personality? The ghosts in the castle don't seem to be suitable for testing this idea. After all, the risks are actually quite high. Unless William can find a form close to the ghosts, he can still use them to conduct experiments recklessly without guilt. Even if he can't save the consciousness, no one will care about these magical creatures. He did think of a kind of unlucky person. Dementors. It seems that Peter Pettigrew can still play a role. William nodded with satisfaction and touched himself another bottle of happy water. However, if he wanted to cheat the victim, he would have to wait for a while to help the Dementors achieve life reshaping and improve their sense of happiness in life. Case number 0 at the moment should not be wasted. Bloody Baron, are you interested in finding a new job? William extended an olive branch. He naturally had no chance of failure. As a ghost, the Bloody Baron had been bored for nearly 1,000 years, because he was not like Professor Binns, who had obtained the permission of the Big Four and could give lectures after death, nor could he be like Peeves, who could play pranks without restraint. Even his only concern was unwilling to see him. What should I do? The Bloody Baron asked blankly. His last work experience was 1,000 years ago, and he tragically stabbed the employer's daughter to death, abandoned the employer himself, and lost his own life. What is a real resume killer? No problem, I will teach you how to do it, William answered patiently. Since Bloody Baron hadn't mentioned salary or anything, he naturally wouldn't take the initiative to ask. As long as it doesn't constitute a labor relationship, no matter how tough he is, he's dead now and can't defeat me. When William gradually explained to Bloody Baron in detail how to deal with the raw materials of the adjusted version of the love potion and what container to use to store the mucus of the fire ash snake eggs, the house elf Lalo brought a new surprise. Dear Mr. Buffalo, the powder metallurgy manufacturer you commissioned has completed the first batch of samples. Lalo handed William a dragon skin bag. The disadvantage of powder metallurgy is that he needs to determine the mold corresponding to the finished product at the beginning, so in the first batch of samples, he can only choose a relatively simple form. In order to ensure versatility, William made a small batch of rings in this batch of products, and all the others were branded. Let me try their magic conduction first. William took out a ring and held the one tightly in his right hand. Fiery alias, become real. He recited a spell of the existence spell. He could feel that there was a vague connection between him and the ring, and this connection seemed very solid. William could choose to use the ring itself to bear the magic power of the spell. Referring to the records in the manuscript he bought from Jama, he used the rune word guard, and the metal ring glowed slightly with silver light. As his will extended, the light covered William's entire body and suddenly became dim. If it weren't for the bright lights on the ceiling of the room, Even William himself might not notice that there was a faint halo flashing around him, but once an offensive spell touched this layer of light, it would instantly transform into a solid barrier. This is a very powerful defensive prop. Although this ring is bare, without any decorations, and presents an inconspicuous gray-brown color, it is one of the most effective magic props William has tinkered with so far. Because it can not only constantly bear the magic power consumption of a rune word, but can even insert one or two simple spells such as waterproof spell and fluorescent flashing. This magic gold is indeed very effective. In terms of the magic power contained, it is almost as good as the base plate carved from the bones of magical creatures, and it is more sensitive. William quickly came to a conclusion after comparing. If this metal is used to make a flying broom, in order to achieve the same speed and flexibility of the Nimbus 2000 through the same form of existence spell, he needs to use about 5 to 10 ounces of magic gold, not counting other auxiliary materials. In terms of cost, the Nimbus 2000 uses the best mahogany, which requires wizards to cultivate in a special way. The cost alone is in the 3 digits. Not to mention the extra labor cost of the broom maker to trim the wood by hand, use the existence spell, and attach the spell to the wood. The synthesis of magic gold, except for a very small amount of basilisk fang powder, the other materials are not expensive. The cost of synthesizing 1 ounce is about 7 gold galleons to 8 gold galleons. But the cost effectiveness is too low, although the input-output ratio is better than that of the Nimbus 2000. William is hard to be satisfied with this output. He couldn't waste a lot of magic gold on making a broken flying machine like a flying broom that should be eliminated by history, but William was very sure that he wanted to trip up those manufacturers who made flying brooms. Only by getting those guys out of the market could William launch his own flying machine, although he hadn't figured out what it should look like yet. It's not okay to make a broom into a flying machine of other shapes. Quidditch has very strict requirements on the appearance of the brooms participating in the competition, and flying carpets are banned throughout the UK, so flying other things is definitely not a reliable idea. William remembered that the reason why the Ministry of Magic banned the import of flying carpets before was too easy to be exposed in the Muggle world, but they didn't seem to have such concerns about flying brooms, and the Ministry of Magic owned many cars that were cast with spells. So it is often only after the Ministry of Magic clearly gives a reason that we can know that the reason is absolutely false. Unless I can find a way to get around it, William decided that after returning to the castle, he must take time to have a good chat with the Weasley twins. But before that, he had to spend some time to process those brands into specifications suitable for the market. The next chapter will be in half an hour. You can read it tomorrow or read it tomorrow night. Chapter 122 Grey Matter. After repeated tests by William, when he divided the small sign into 20 equal parts, which is about the size of half a fingernail, each unit of the small particle can constantly bear a stress-triggered armor shield. This passively triggered armor spell can probably resist the crushing to pieces of an ordinary senior student. Compared with the high-priced hat developed by the Weasley brothers in the original book, which can only resist some pranks but is purchased in large quantities by the Ministry of Magic, it can be regarded as a very fine magic prop. So William decided to divide each magic gold small sign into 100 equal parts, so that after they trigger the armor shield several times, they will break apart and become worthless powder. From the perspective of resource reuse, this is naturally a complete waste. But if the effect of putting it on the market is considered, it can only be regarded as a reasonable commercial operation. This number may be 3 times, or 4 times, no, it's still 3 times. 3 times is more than enough. William felt that he was very generous. One sign requires 5 ounces of magic gold, and after 100 equal parts, each part contains 0.05 ounces. Magic gold is an absolutely scarce resource. The basilisk fang powder needed to make it costs a lot of money to buy, and it is in short supply in the entire magic world. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that if it was divided further, it might contain too little magic power, not even enough to support a piece of armor, William would even want to divide it into 400 equal parts. In order to better promote sales, and more importantly, to conceal the metal of magic gold, William also imitated the form of the prefect badge and made a bottle cap-sized badge with the patterns of the 4 colleges. This kind of thing is easy to make. You just need to make the badges in ordinary people's stores, and then apply some developing potion to them, and you can make the animals on the badges move. For such a beautiful and practical badge, I will sell it for 2 gold galleons. Is it not too much? If the number of armor spells on it is used up and you want to replenish it, just mail the badge back and add another gold galleon. William felt that he was really getting kinder and kinder. With Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets opened and everyone in the castle in danger, such a practical and stimulating protective item is sold for only this little money, which is simply charity. Although there are not many students in the entire Hogwarts castle, there are at least nearly 1,000 of them. If this part of the market can be spread out first, and then sold to the British wizarding world, William believes that it will definitely have a good promotion effect. But Fred and George seem to have some completely different views from William. Are you sure you want to do this? Fred stared at William with a strange look. After all, the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, what he didn't finish probably meant to express, didn't you catch it yourself? You, William, are much more dangerous than the basilisk, but the basilisk is still alive, isn't it? Every student in the castle is in danger at all times, William emphasized. Although the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets has been caught, and is currently enjoying all-weather humanistic care in the underground factory, not only can it enjoy a large amount of magic potions every day, but also has house elves doing full-body snake care for it every now and then. It can enjoy free services such as exfoliation, teeth cleaning, scale polishing, detoxification and beauty care. Although the technician's techniques may be a bit rough, so that after each care, there are almost no intact scales left on its body, and it will be weak for a while after the toxins in the body are discharged, but it still has the possibility of escape. Won't this kind of badge be used up soon? George showed a thoughtful look. 3 shield charms may seem like a lot, but it can also be easily triggered by various small evil curses. After almost every class, there will be some unexpected collisions between Slytherin and Gryffindor students in the corridor. These 3 times may not even be enough for dinner. We are in Hogwarts Castle, the safest place in the British wizarding world. How could there be any dangerous things happening at ordinary times? But if there is a strong need for an unlimited number of armor curse badges, we can also customize it according to customer needs. Of course, that will take a certain amount of time and cost. William has already thought about it. The constant version of the armor curse badge can be charged for 98 gold galleons. In addition to the movement of the badge, it can glow and speak when pressed. If you add another 20 galleons, you can also customize the badge into the style of a family crest. Add another 50 galleons, and the badge can also be engraved with the wizard's name. At that time, a wizard limit will be launched. The top-level brooch will not only be made into the pattern and color of the family crest, but also can cast a constant protective spell, move, glow, automatically keep warm, and automatically repair. Then ask Lockhart and Dumbledore to sign, make a beautiful box, and then give away some other gadgets. Wouldn't it sell for the price of a firebolt? Just arrange it for a few ordinary pure-blood families first. Seeing that they are all wearing it, if other families have not taken action, it must be that they are not decent enough. If the pure-blood families have bought it, other wealthy wizards will also think that this thing is worth it. William, who came from the future, is well aware of the mystery of involution. I made a total of 500 ordinary version badges in the first batch, but I estimate that the matter of Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets will soon be announced by Professor Dumbledore, so we have to hurry up and sell them all. William patted Fred and George on the shoulders. You can get a 5% commission for selling them, but you too will get 8% from me, if you understand what I mean. 2 gold galleons for the ordinary version of the badge are not expensive, even for a young wizard from an ordinary family. It is only £10. Perhaps except for the Weasley family who can give birth to more than rabbits, almost everyone can afford it. And now that the heir of Slytherin has not been exposed, it is the best time to sell fear. The twin brothers looked at each other. Of course, they strode towards the common room. William also taught Gemma the same operation and asked her to be in charge of the Slytherin part. Because Penelope was not very interested in selling such things, the Ravenclaw part was handed over to Jimmy, who is well informed, and Robert Hilliard, the prefect who knew many people. As for Hufflepuff, William really didn't have any acquaintances, but Zhangqiu, who happened to be in the library with Penelope, said that she had a friend who could help. Friend, when Penelope repeated teasingly, her face suddenly turned red, and William could almost see the steam coming out of her head. I remember Cedric is just in the 3rd year now. William recalled the unlucky guy in the original book who received half of the protagonist's script, and then was sent an Avada Kedavra by Peter Pettigrew who wanted to resurrect Voldemort. But now Peter Pettigrew has become a fool. Who knows what will happen then? Even as a time traveler, William himself could not foresee the future at this moment. But fortunately, the gold galleons would not lie to him. Almost overnight, the name of Grey Matter Magical Props Company spread throughout Hogwarts, because in the box containing the badge, in addition to the badge itself, there was also a quality assurance certificate and user instructions provided by Grey Matter. Is everything on it true? Penelope spread out a quality assurance certificate, which very detailed introduced the production process of this badge. William spent about 20 minutes and wrote it very carefully. Part of them can be true. After a brief consideration, William gave his answer. The craftsmanship of this badge did come from a mysterious alchemist in the East. France is in the east of Britain, no problem. The skills did have a history of more than 1,000 years, the basilisk lived for 1,000 years, and the materials did contain some ingredients that are almost extinct in the magic world today. Perhaps there is no second basilisk in the whole of Britain. As for the rest, the final right of interpretation can only belong to Grey Matter Magical Props Company. William looked around the hall. From his perspective, almost everyone at the Gryffindor table had already worn a badge with a lion pattern. Fred and George had come up with a genius idea. They gave Harry a badge and staged a fake match with him in the common room. First year Harry Potter was able to defeat 2 senior students alone. Because of this, they even posted an advertisement on the bulletin board for this. There were also many students at the Slytherin table wearing dark green snake patterns. They were simply angry with the Gryffindor. Because the Gryffindor students who bought a badge relied on the armor charm granted by the badge to frequently provoke conflicts after class, and took a very big advantage. The little snakes soon realized that if they didn't use the same cheat and pull their combat power back to the same level, they really couldn't deal with these little lions. But when Gryffindor found that the Slytherins had also worn badges overnight, they suddenly became well behaved again, and behaved like model students one by one, leaving the little snakes really angry. There were quite a few people wearing badges at the Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw tables. About half of the students wore them, and most of the others were beginning to be tempted. Dinner was about to begin, and at the same time, a tall figure quietly appeared at the door of the old girl's bathroom on the 2nd floor of the castle. Chapter 123 Prologue. The old girl's bathroom on the 2nd floor of the castle. The floor was once again covered with water. A tall figure carefully poked his head out, and after making sure that Moaning Myrtle was not hiding in a toilet, he walked into the bathroom. Except for a sign blocking the door that said under maintenance, temporarily unavailable, everything here was the same as before. That damn old bee, Marcus Flint muttered. He was ecstatic to be able to take over the glorious job of opening the Slytherin chamber from the Great Master. Being able to be loyal to the heir of Slytherin and punish those mudbloods and pure-blood traitors with his own hands was the job Marcus had always dreamed of. The first victim of the basilisk was Draco Malfoy, who was personally selected by him and recommended to the Great Master. This will not only confuse Dumbledore's sight, but also make those families who betrayed you and thus recognize their own status, crawling at the feet of the huge figure. He explained his idea like this. They all say that the heirs of Flint's generation are not smart enough and not reliable enough. But I think you are still quite smart. The cruel and cold voice raised its voice slightly, as if it was expressing sincere admiration. But neither Marcus nor his master expected that Dumbledore would react so quickly to set a curfew for the entire castle and prohibit anyone from acting alone. After that, the board of directors with hay in their heads did not take any action. Has that old guy Lucius changed his nature to eat grass? Marcus thought with some resentment. Hogwarts had such a big problem, and his son was petrified. It was unknown when he could be released from this state. However, the old dog of the Malfoy family was like nothing happened and did not retaliate against Dumbledore. Even more unfortunate was that, for some inexplicable reason, many bathrooms in the castle exploded one after another. Fortunately, before these explosions, there were very obvious smell and sound warnings, so that the students only suffered a double blow to their appetite and psychology, but did not suffer any substantial harm. After research by me and the professors, we can conclude that this is because there is a problem with the spell of the plumbing system of Hogwarts Castle. I have to regretfully announce that the following bathrooms will be temporarily closed for maintenance until further notice. When Dumbledore announced this, Marcus wanted to rush up and tear his face off, because the bathroom on the 2nd floor, which was the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, happened to be among the bathrooms that were temporarily closed. At that time, Marcus once thought that Dumbledore and his men might have discovered the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, but his master laughed arrogantly. That's impossible. The secret of the Chamber of Secrets has been circulating in Hogwarts for 1,000 years. How could these stupid guys find it? Fortunately, the subsequent developments also gave Marcus some comfort. The castle has been calm, and neither Dumbledore nor the deans have made any unusual movements. As someone who opened Salazar Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets under the order of his master, Marcus naturally knew what deadly weapons were hidden there. That was a basilisk, and there was no place better for it to play its advantages than the intricate pipeline system in the castle. With such a big advantage, no matter how strong Dumbledore is, he can't defeat it silently, Marcus repeatedly comforted himself. But in order to prevent the students in the castle from mistakenly entering the bathroom under repair, the nosy old bee actually pulled out a small circle of wire outside and set a spell. We are certainly not afraid of him, nor are we unable to solve it, we just don't want to be exposed to him easily. Marcus had been thinking this way, and after a few days of torment, he finally found that the spell cordon outside the bathroom had disappeared some time ago. In order to ensure that no accidents would happen, he not only checked other bathrooms that were repaired, but also waited for a few more days. We must check the situation of the secret room today. Marcus finally made up his mind and successfully obtained the approval of his master. Taking advantage of the time when everyone else was finishing their meal, they came to the entrance of the secret room together. Open it. Facing the bronze faucet with a small snake carved on it, he stuttered in Parseltongue. The faucet was covered in a brilliant white light and began to rotate, and then the sink began to move. It sank into the floor drain, revealing a pipe wide enough for one person to slide in. Taking 2 deep breaths of fresh air, Marcus got in. At the same time, the hall of Hogwarts Castle was filled with laughter. There are only a few days left before the Christmas holiday. Influenced by the festive atmosphere, the professors in the castle have appropriately relaxed their academic requirements for students and started to teach some knowledge that is more interesting than practical in class. Just now, Professor Dumbledore announced that they have found mandrakes. When they're mature, they can be made into potions and fed to the victims of the Chamber of Secrets. This made many people spontaneously applaud. To be honest, William did not believe that Fred, George, Harry, Jimmy, and Slot would be sincerely happy that Draco Malfoy could be freed from petrification. The Quidditch House Cup will be restored by then, Jimmy shouted loudly, and his words made the applause even more enthusiastic. But the real reason for the applause in the auditorium was that after more than a long week, the White Wizard professor finally announced that the bathrooms that were originally under repair in the castle would be unblocked from today and could be used freely. This could actually be achieved a few days ago, but considering the need to do a full show, William still persuaded Dumbledore to wait a few more days. Anyway, it would not be inconvenient for him. At this moment, William was carefully checking the Marauder's map in his hand, and was satisfied to see that the black dot representing Marcus Flint suddenly disappeared in the old girl's bathroom on the 2nd floor. The fish is about to be caught, William thought easily, put away the Marauder's map, and leaned over to get himself a piece of perfectly fried beef shoulder. It must have been roasted for a while before being taken out of the oven and finished in a frying pan, leaving a beautiful brown crust on the surface of the meat. Next to the beef shoulder, there were mashed potatoes sprinkled with gravy, crushed herbs, and black pepper, and then served with salty and fragrant mushroom sauce. Even the most picky gourmets would not refuse such a delicacy. You seem very happy. Penelope looked at William with some doubts. Well, it can't be said to be happy. It can only be said that it is something that has been on my mind for a long time, and there should be a result today, William answered easily. From the moment the Bloody Baron portrayed the image of Marcus Flint, he knew that Voldemort would be arranged by Dumbledore. Dumbledore spent several days preparing. William would not be surprised if Marcus found himself under a very fierce attack when he came out of the pipe at the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets. At this moment, in the teacher's seat in the hall, Lupin Remus, the professor of defense against the dark arts, and Severus Snape, the professor of potions, were absent from tonight's dinner. But it was not just them. William also saw 2 special names walking into the castle and suddenly disappearing in the bathroom on the 2nd floor when observing the Marauder's map these days. Daedalus Digger. Kingsley Shacklebolt. Of course, both of them are members of the Order of the Phoenix. Perhaps they were worried that Alastor Moody was too notorious and would be alarmed if someone accidentally saw him, and Arthur Weasley had a job at the Ministry of Magic and could not spend a lot of time on surveillance, so the 2 of them did not appear for the time being. But this is already the top configuration that Dumbledore can find and trust to fight against dark wizards. Marcus Flint could hardly be considered a gifted student, even from the perspective of Slytherin. Although his height and weight were overwhelmingly superior to his peers, this was not the case in terms of magic. Even if Voldemort, who was currently only a remnant soul, was faced with a coordinated attack by several wizards at the level of Aurors, it would be difficult for Marcus to gain any decisive advantage. Besides, Dumbledore could be there at any time. Speaking of which, it seems that the Order of the Phoenix in this era does not have many reliable people to use. William had to admit that compared to Voldemort's core team, Dumbledore's side seemed to be much weaker, and it was no wonder that he had to gamble everything to change his home. Just after William noticed that Marcus Flint's name disappeared from the Marauders map, after a while, Dumbledore's expression suddenly became serious in the teacher's seat. He turned his head and whispered something to Professor McGonagall, who nodded with some embarrassment. After talking to Professor McGonagall in a low voice for a while, Dumbledore stood up suddenly and walked out of the hall with big strides. The monitoring spell he set in the bathroom on the second floor was triggered by someone, but not long after, the gold coin that the White Wizard left for Kingsley Shacklebolt as a means of communication in an emergency also became hot. Something is wrong, Dumbledore thought. Because Kingsley and his team were too fast in sending the message. Counting the time Kingsley and his team spent heading to the entrance of the passage after receiving the warning of the intrusion, it was only a few minutes. Whether they easily subdued Marcus Flint, who was possessed by Voldemort, or he escaped and had to chase him in the complex pipes of the Chamber of Secrets, it should not have taken such a short time. Following his call, Fawkes soon appeared beside Dumbledore, and they rushed to the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 124, Heart-Piercing. Something is wrong. William also noticed something strange on Dumbledore's face as he left the hall. What's wrong? Penelope asked with concern. William did not tell her that Voldemort was in the castle, but he still revealed that Professor Dumbledore might find out the successor of Slytherin recently. I don't know, but I feel that something must have gone wrong. William quickly thought about what he should do next. The front battlefield naturally does not need my activeness. Moreover, in terms of combat effectiveness, if I go up, it's just giving myself away. What I should do is to use my full vision as a time traveler to trip up the old Voldemort and ensure that he will not have the chance to turn over. He had a clear understanding of his own abilities from the beginning. Fortunately, Dumbledore did not expect William to play any special role, but let him choose how to act. Although we don't know what happened in the Chamber of Secrets, we can be sure that only Marcus entered the Chamber of Secrets. Assuming that he might find a way to delay Dumbledore and those wizards, what would Quirrell do? Peter Pettigrew ran back and forth between the castle, the Forbidden Forest, and Hogsmeade, passing things, which proved that Quirrell, who escaped to the Forbidden Forest, was still alive. The secret passages leading to Hogsmeade were all sealed, which meant that Voldemort could only rely on Quirrell. If Quirrell didn't know that Marcus had been discovered, that would be the best, but once Voldemort had a way to inform him and he could cooperate, the Philosopher's Stone must be the key to the problem. William clearly remembered that even if he could defeat Voldemort now and drive him out of Marcus' body, Dumbledore would not be able to kill Voldemort completely. Whatever Quirrell wants to do in the Forbidden Forest, the most likely thing is to sneak into the castle and steal the Philosopher's Stone. What I should do is to slow down the process and prevent Quirrell from easily getting to the corridor on the 4th floor before Dumbledore can fly over. William quietly poked Penelope. I need your help, he whispered. Just as William took Penelope and quietly went to the small corridor on the east side of the 4th floor, a very fierce battle was taking place in the Slytherin's secret room at the bottom of the castle. Confringo, come out, Dumbledore's rats, Marcus Flint shouted arrogantly, holding the wand in his hand tightly, and using powerful spells almost without any gaps. There was a deep wound on his forehead, and blood was slowly seeping down, making his already hideous face look even uglier. Of course, it was Snape's God of War. Not long after he fell to the ground from the end of the pipe, he was attacked by Kingsley and his men. If it weren't for the Master's foresight, Marcus thought secretly. Several sudden beams of light shot straight out from the darkness and fell on him, but were swallowed up by the black barrier. The barrier formed by this black light only lasted for 1 or 2 breaths, but it was enough for Marcus to react. Just as the Master taught him, he subconsciously shouted the spell and lit up the bell-shaped pattern buried in his heart. The majestic magic power was pumped out. Although Marcus didn't know what happened, he felt that he was invincible at the moment. The spells that were originally very difficult and obscure to him were now like breathing, and he could do them at will. It's a pity that the old thing was reluctant to tell me the spell of Avada Kedavra, and I haven't been able to prove my achievements to the Great Master. When I returned to the family, that damned one, Marcus thought with resentment. Although he didn't know the Avada Kedavra, he knew what spell he should use to vent his anger. Crucio, he shouted the spell loudly. This was of course a spell he secretly learned from Old Flint. When he practiced it privately before, he could only use it to torture ordinary animals such as cats and dogs. But now, it was hot, like a blood-colored thunderbolt, sweeping towards Daedalus, who was about to cast a spell with half of his head exposed from the shadow of the corner. Damn it! Daedalus suddenly withdrew his hand and shrank his body back. With a snap, the brick wall beside him was bitten by the spell, and a large cloud of dust exploded. "Where's Dumbledore?" Daedalus asked Kingsley, who was not far away. In a low but quick voice, "He only told me that he was going to subdue a fifth-year student. But you call this a fifth-year student? Come out. Cowards." And our beloved professor, Marcus, with a mad look on his face, pressed forward step by step, squandering his magic power recklessly. The powerful evil curse in his hand was like a simple disarmament version. Strange black smoke rose from his body, and when it reached the ceiling, it turned into liquid and dripped onto the ground. Wherever he walked, whether it was the wall or the ground, it was stained with a sticky black liquid. "I have informed him that Dumbledore may come at any time, but we must stop him." Kingsley frowned. Under the dim light underground, his bald head seemed to be shrouded in a faint halo. He didn't know where his hat had been thrown, and his left hand was also injured. In the pursuit just now, they had lost their direction and had no idea where they were at the moment. It was dark here, and the pipes were crisscrossed. Even if Dumbledore came, it would take some time. "We must not let him return to the castle." Snape took over the conversation. Dumbledore gave the task of stopping Marcus to the three of them, but he did not expect that the three of them together would not be able to beat a fifth-year student, and they had to retreat in embarrassment after just one encounter. "There is something strange about him," Kingsley said. He recalled that after receiving the signal from Professor Dumbledore, the three of them used the disillusionment charm to quietly approach this Slytherin student. In order to ensure that they could quickly subdue him, they also used a silent spell. Petrificus totalis, total petrification, Stupefy, faint, expelliarmus, Three beams of light shot out, but were stopped by an air barrier the moment before they approached Marcus. They watched Marcus shout some strange spells, and suddenly black smoke rose around him. Powerful spells, even the unforgivable curse, were used one after another without any scruples. "Hominem Revelio," Marcus shouted the spell loudly. Kingsley suddenly felt a chill on his back. He pulled Daedalus forward with all his strength. Snape quickly waved his wand Protego, and a transparent silver barrier quickly rose. Almost in the next moment, a flash of fire flashed across his eyes. Boom! The entire solid wall made of marble bricks was blown to pieces, and the next spell had already condensed and appeared at the top of Marcus's wand. Crucio. The red lightning was about to bite Kingsley, who was caught off guard, but Daedalus, who was being held by him, suddenly jumped forward and blocked him. The screams of pain that were almost inhuman echoed throughout the entire secret room. Daedalus collapsed to the ground, his body twisted like a cooked lobster, blood flowing from the corners of his mouth and nostrils. Although the Cruciatus curse is not fatal, it does not mean that it is not terrifying. As an unforgivable curse, it can bring extremely intense pain to the recipient, which may even affect the soul. Can't escape. Kingsley and Snape exchanged glances for a moment. They must fight back. It must be here, and it must be now. While the battle was going on in the secret room, William took Penelope to the small corridor on the 4th floor. He first opened the door carefully to make sure that the three-headed dog Fluffy was still sleeping well. "I hope there's still time." William silently crossed his fingers and made a cross. He placed some small gadgets on the way to the corridor on the 4th floor. Once someone approached, he would be warned. Someone might try to break in here later. "What we need to do is to set up enough obstacles in this corridor," William explained patiently, taking out a small bag filled with a divided magic gold and handing half of it to Penelope. If he guessed correctly, Dumbledore would definitely ask Professor McGonagall to keep all the students in the hall before leaving, and no one would approach this corridor normally. The spell is Fiery Realis, become real, like this. William showed Penelope the stress-triggered existence spell he had made, which made her feel bright. After you are sure that the spell is effective, cast another spell you like on it. In fact, Instead of choosing those offensive spells, it is better to choose some that can confuse the opponent. Don't forget to hide it afterwards, William added, like this, while tapping a piece of magic gold with his wand and adding the maximum intensity of the light spell to it. Incendio, burning fire. Penelope also tried it. We don't actually need to prepare too much, but we must ensure that they can be distributed everywhere. The two of them quickly repeated this process, and most of the spells attached to them were of the type that humiliated more than hurtful. But won't the intruder find out that we just want to delay him? Penelope frowned and asked. Of course he will, and that's the purpose of doing these things, William replied, and while speaking, he had already arranged the mines on the inner side. The real killer had been placed in the small corridor, where there was a teacup given to William by Dumbledore, and 3 magic gold plates, all of which he had filled with truth with the existence spell. He and Penelope left the passage in front of the small corridor, hid in a corridor on the side, took out the Marauder's map and waited quietly. Look there, Penelope suddenly pulled William's sleeve, pointed out the window, and whispered. Following her finger, William saw a ball of fire that was expanding. That was the direction of the Forbidden Forest. Chapter 125, Fire in the Forbidden Forest. Fire and the Forbidden Forest, these are 2 words that are not suitable to be paired together in almost any situation. Is Quirrell crazy? William thought. He didn't know why Quirrell would choose to cause trouble in the Forbidden Forest at this juncture. It's not worth it. William took out a gold coin used to contact the house elf Lalo and rubbed it gently. Soon, Lalo appeared beside him. It seemed that because the dinner was still going on, the house elf was still wearing his ugly teacup cover. Mr. Buffalo, Lalo bowed respectfully. Lalo, I need you to take a risk and do something for me, William patted his shoulder and said seriously. Risk? Frightened by William's nervous attitude, Lalo repeated his words again, anything is fine. The house elves will always serve the wizards of Hogwarts. Lalo spoke empty words, as if to comfort William, and as if to comfort himself. I need you to help me check what happened in the Forbidden Forest. Of course, you must be careful. You have to go to the Great Hall to borrow the invisibility cloak from Potter, and then wear these 2 rings. William told Lalo what to do next in great detail, and the house elf nodded frequently. Soon, Lalo disappeared on the 4th floor. William, you don't think something serious will happen in the Forbidden Forest? Maybe it's just a fire, like Hagrid lost an oil lamp or something. Penelope showed a worried expression. Of course I hope so, but no matter what, we will know soon. William waited quietly. After leaving William, Lalo went to the Great Hall to express his idea of borrowing the invisibility cloak to Harry as he instructed. Of course there is no problem, it's in my dormitory, I can take you to find it, Harry agreed very readily. I don't know why, he always felt uneasy tonight, and the scar on his forehead was always aching, as if it was always expecting something to happen. But to be honest, in the past few days, or more precisely, since he had that strange dream in Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, many changes have been happening silently. From time to time, when he was in class or doing homework, Harry would suddenly have some thoughts like this spell would be better if used like this, or if it were me, I would also add a small amount of crushed crescent grass to ensure that the potion would not lose its effect too quickly. Every night after falling asleep, he would experience the dream again. It was in a nursery, and a twisted and tall black figure gradually approached, and a woman blocked his way. Avada Kedavra, every time, the dream would end with such a cruel spell, which turned into a terrifying green beam, and Harry's eyes returned to darkness. But the dream itself seems to be changing, Harry muttered, and took Lalo into the dormitory, took out the invisibility cloak from under the bed, and handed it to the house elf. It's okay, you don't have to take me back to the hall. I'm a little tired and want to rest early. He shook his head and watched the house elf disappear into the air. It's really convenient, Harry thought. After washing up, he laid down on the bed early. The scar on his forehead was aching, making Harry unable to fall asleep. In his daze, he heard a faint sound. It was naturally the house elf Lalo who returned the invisibility cloak to Harry. But compared to the peace in the castle, the Forbidden Forest has been plunged into a sea of fire. Crackling. The unpleasant and pungent smell emitted when the wet trees were ignited filled Remus Lupin's nostrils. He actually set the fire. If there was a choice, Lupin would only set a big fire in the Forbidden Forest unless he was crazy, but at this moment Lupin had no choice. It seemed that only through fire could they temporarily stop the attack of their enemies. He, along with dozens of centaurs and Hagrid, were trying their best to hold on to a somewhat crude camp belonging to the centaurs. There were even a few unicorns in their ranks. Their enemies were dozens of giant monsters taller than Hagrid and dozens of werewolves. All of them were lifeless, with their eye sockets almost completely occupied by the whites of their eyes, without a single pupil. It was not a full moon night, but the werewolves had already deformed, revealing their pale backs and hairy bodies, with sharp nails that could easily tear any flesh into pieces. But what really frightened Lupin was not his furry fellows, but a very tall figure standing not far from the entrance of the camp. It was of course a giant monster. But a human body grew from the giant monster's back, without any skin on its body, and its muscles and blood vessels were exposed to the air. The calves of the two legs pierced into the giant monster's back like roots. "You can't resist me. Hand over the unicorn, and I might consider sparing your life." The man raised his head lazily, and the voice seemed to ring directly in Lupin's ear. Several centaurs warriors had wanted to attack him by decapitation, but before they got close, they had already fallen to their knees, unconscious, and their flesh and bones were constantly peeled off from their bodies in large chunks and fell to the ground. Not long after, they turned into a forest of white bones, which made people shudder just by looking at them. This is undoubtedly the most terrible black magic. "We must do something," Lupin bit his lower lip. Entrusted by Professor Dumbledore, he has been living in the centaur camp these days. Influenced by the previous werewolf attack, the warriors of several centaur settlements in the Forbidden Forest temporarily merged and lived together. Not long ago, they were suddenly attacked silently. If it weren't for the many traps buried near the camp, they would not have been able to discover it in time. After a brief confrontation, knowing that he was no match for the enemy, Lupin chose to retreat and used a spell to ignite all the wood around the camp, building a temporary barrier. But this was just a means to delay time. "Be careful," the black-haired centaur Bane suddenly shouted loudly, and his four hooves stamped, rushing to the side and back of the camp at an incredible speed. There, a female centaur with a cream-colored body and golden hair fell to the ground, and moved her huge body backwards in panic. From the shadows between the branches, a tall werewolf broke out and was about to pounce on her. Seeing that Bane was too late to arrive, and before the werewolf was about to bite off the female centaur's throat easily, a red light of the spell suddenly appeared. "Reducto!" Penelope shouted the spell vigorously. At the same time, William quietly appeared among the centaurs and began to distribute small bags to them. "Professor, and Hagrid, I will explain why we are here later. Now our priority is to fight off these strange things." Seeing the confused and worried expressions of Lupin and Hagrid, William hurriedly explained. "If you encounter an attack, throw them out immediately, one by one, never throw them together, and keep a sufficient distance," William repeatedly reminded. "Believe me, this thing is much more useful than your spears and bows and arrows. We have no way to deal with them, right? Just give it a try. Anyway, the situation will not get worse than it is now," Firenze said sadly. He took the lead in taking several small bags from William's hand and carefully kept them in front of him. His words also made the other centaurs a little shaken, but in the end, led by a centaur with red hair and beard, they surrounded one by one and took the small bags holding tiny crystals from William's hand. "Oh? Isn't this our buffalo?" The human figure on the giant monster suddenly smiled and said, as if William's appearance was something worth celebrating for him. "I thought Dumbledore would at least send Snape, the venomous snake, or McGonagall out of respect. But if it's you, it's just right to continue the conversation we didn't finish last time." He controlled the troll under him to take a few steps forward, and easily kicked open the wooden roadblock at the entrance of the centaur camp. The firelight illuminated his skinless face, leaving only flesh and blood. "Sorry, I have a fever these 2 days and have been in a daze. I forgot to post a single chapter yesterday and asked for leave. Today is also one update. Let's see if I can make up for it in 2 days when I am in a better state." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.